would you guys spend a day in the sun in the stadium to get a T-shirt made?
Not a chance.
And why would anybody? So people who have got things to do don't want to go to a stadium.
It's too far because your president doesn't mind to lie with a straight face and say, if you don't vote for the ANC, the grants are gone. And they're
hard to work out. This thing where he passes the NHI the other day, right, is catastrophic for billion-dollar businesses in South Africa.
We should not panic about this. This thing is just not going to happen. It's too complex to implement. But remember, a politician has to appeal to the base, the lowest common denominator, right? While managing the top end.
And that's really where the hard work of this country is supposed to be, is cultivating hundreds, thousands of black billionaires. The money is not getting to black people. Utaki. It's not getting to Utaki. And for me, as an entrepreneur, I have a problem with that. Who's on it? It's Action SA.
Action SA, IFP, EA, and then a number of reds and mice. To be honest. But this nobody knows anything about. Okay?
Bring 1 or 2 seats sometimes.
Yeah. So
if DA, let's just say in a hypothetical world, DA were to win, do you think like all the streets, everything in the country would work as they proclaim? Like
that's what they want you to think.
But do you think it would happen though?
No.
Why?
I disagree.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special edition of Podcast and Chill. The road has finally begun. We're all counting the days until the elections. So we thought it'd be a great idea because I was chatting to my wife, right? And she didn't know who to vote for. I don't know who to vote for. Started speaking to other people. They don't know who to vote for. I'm sure some of the chillers watching now don't know who the fuck to vote for.
Yeah.
So I thought it'd be dope to get you guys in, because you guys are experts in this field, just to help us.
Not me. There's only one expert here.
But the outcome for this...
You take the expert portfolio.
But the objective for this episode is by the end, we just want to know, have a clearer picture of who we should vote for, So let me start introducing you to our landlord, of course, Mr. David Mashabela. He's got his own podcast, King David Studios. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks
Moving right along to Zimasa Mustafa. He's been on the podcast as well. He's a social economic commentator. Thank you for coming through, bro.
Shout out.
And then big shout out to Mike Sham. He's also a podcaster like myself and everybody here, except Bra JJ. We're waiting for you.
We're waiting. Yeah.
And last but not least, he needs no introduction at all, JJ Thabane. He's a political commentator. Thank you so much, guys, for coming through.
Yeah.
I want to start by asking you guys, I'll start with JJ. How important are these elections, the ones we're heading to?
Look, these are crucial elections. I mean, I know that there's always a hype before elections. So I said to people, you must always temper your hype a little bit. 2019, people were saying, this is Armageddon, it's over for the ANC. Before those elections, you would think the ANC would be in the opposition benches. Didn't happen. We still had number 1, 2, 3 in that category. And there's a danger that may just be the outcome of the next elections. But there's also a lot of pushback, a lot of new voices, etc. that could come in. Just the recent voice, MK, coming into the picture, has changed the polls, by far. I mean, in February, EFF was at 15%, it's now at 11%.
Wow.
And they swap places with MK, right? So in that sense, there are new voices. Rais Mzansi was not there in 2019. Bossa was not there in 2019. You understand? The DA was not like this in 2019. So there's a sense in which there's a lot of anticipation about what these elections may deliver. But with politics, you always have to temper expectations because I feel that our population is not ready to make the switch. They may protest. They may burn down things. They may say there's no water, there's no electricity. And so, I mean, there is a village in Northwest called Tswaying. A sewage is running down to the graveyard. I mean, that's the worst thing that can happen. So you have $70 while you are alive. Even when you are dead, the shit follows you to the graveyard, okay? But they still vote for the ANC 68%. I mean, what else do you want?
Yeah.
What's the worst thing that must happen before you change your vote? So I think there's still that thing about historical, no, we want the party of Mandela. Please don't bother us with these other people.
Isn't that the old generation?
It's the old generation, but there's a bit of the new generation that also thinks so. Because when you say new generation, what are you talking about? You're talking about somebody who's 20, 35. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's a long range, right? So overall, you have the old generation. I mean, you saw the veterans coming out. Yesterday, I talked about the veterans on my show. And the NC people were not happy because I said, these guys are liars.
Yeah.
I know in African tradition, you don't say old people are lying. But these guys are liars. You know, Mbeki comes out to say, these people are crooks. How can I campaign for crooks? 2 months later, he says, please vote for them. They will change.
Yeah.
When they will change. You know, Mbeki was the first person to talk about ANC renewal as far back as 2002. He called something like, we need a new cadre. Now, I was still waiting for that cadre. Kgalema Motlanthe talked to BBC saying, these guys must lose elections in order for them to wake up. Because as long as they don't lose elections, they are not going to change. Because when they lose elections, the crooks will leave. Because there's no longer patronage. And the ones who are real about the ANC will stay. Go and Google Matthew Posa. And in the last 5 years, how many times he has talked about ANC corruption? In lectures, in functions and what? You would think this guy has resigned. Like Trevor Manuel. You know? You think he's resigned. You say, I'm leaving. And now he's on the street saying, yeah, no. I mean, every road has potholes. Yeah, of course. In South Africa, every road has potholes. But he's trying to say, don't be too hard on the ANC. They've done so well. And these are elders who are supposed to call order. Mbeki wrote a 17-page letter, which I doubt half of the NEC read it. But nevertheless, 17-page letter saying you are abusing your power, you are not holding the president accountable. And then in the same sentence, the next 3 months, he says, vote for the same people.
That makes no sense.
So yes, and of course, last one before I get off, Mbeki and a gentleman I respect called Dr. Zerote saying, if the ANC doesn't win elections, the sky will fall. I said, the sky didn't fall in the Western Cape. I know there's problems, but the sky didn't fall. Everywhere else where the ANC lost elections, there may be chaos here and there, but the sky did not fall. In other words, we'll still have a government, even if it's not of the ANC. And you cannot tell people ahead of an election that, no, if you don't vote for the ANC, the sky will fall. So basically, why are we having an election? We're having an election so people can choose. And we are in this freedom so that we can be free to unchoose those we don't like.
And is it just me? But I didn't see a lot of parties campaigning this year. Or is it just me?
It's actually quite interesting. We're just having a conversation off air with Brad JJ. It feels like campaigns across the board have not really taken off. And I was thinking about it, and it has to do with political party funding. There's not enough money, or I'd say black money, flowing around in political parties across all of them that allows them to get onto the ground, to print more T-shirts, to get into more spaces, to campaign more. So when you have less money, you've got to get more creative. That's why digital has suddenly become this heavily contested space, right? Yeah. Because it's easier. Your rand goes further on digital. So it feels
And
different.
we didn't get any money. Hey, we were open for business. We didn't get any money. It's zero.
Different.
Yeah, it's
Nobody
different.
calls me.
Nobody called you as well.
It's really different. And it's quite interesting because for people that have like a little bit older, right? I'm like 37 now. I've seen a couple of elections, right? And this one is being contested heavily on digital. It's like the first time where I can be like, okay, I don't see as many community meetings. I'm not seeing as many mini rallies. I'm not seeing as many stadiums. It's been like one stadium per party, which is different, right? Because generally parties go around the country. If you're national, you're trying to fill up a stadium in every single province so that you can show people I've got national strength.
Yeah.
And that has shifted a bit.
I think the EFF has been doing that more in terms of community meetings, what they call town halls, which is quite an interesting aspect because even the ANC hasn't been doing that much of town halls.
Voter engagement.
Like get people to engage, not just speech and we go out. So I thought that's an interesting one. You are right, there isn't enough money going around because people are afraid to put their
give.
money on opposition and so on, because if they lose, then they are going to be chucked out of town on business.
So
Yes,
they're treading lightly.
they're trading lightly.
Mike, how big are these elections for you, sir?
I think these elections very big. I've lived through a few phases of South Africa, from the old South Africa into the new South Africa, and I think that these elections is not the beginning of the end; it's the end of the beginning. That famous Churchill quote. It's the end of the beginning of the new South Africa. From here on out, we're now going to cut ties to 1994 and the struggle. From here on out, it's the new South Africa for people, for this generation to decide where they want to take South Africa. Because a lot of what happened in the first 30 years was still, designed by the large machinery from the past. Now it's in our hands, and so I'm seeing a new energy, new people. You're seeing parties that are still think that it's 20 years ago. It's not. It's a new world. You've got to campaign differently. To the point about stadiums and things like that, I don't know to what degree that's still relevant. Would you go spend a day in the sun in the stadium to get a T-shirt, mate?
Not a chance.
And why would anybody? So people who have got things to do don't want to go to a stadium. You're not going to find that in many countries. So I think it's time that those sort of trends make sense to me. A lot of stuff on digital, and certainly ask JJ. The politicians have made themselves available, and we've been interviewing them like hell on channels that devote. Suddenly they want to talk to us, and that's where the campaigning is.
And for you, Brad Dave, from a radio background, like what's the temperature?
Look, I work for a different radio station, SABC. We go through workshops before elections in terms of things we can say, we can't say.
Oh,
because
man.
no. They don't control what we say. They don't control what we say. They're trying to manage campaigns and parties campaigning using our voices, because it's a public platform, so we have to be very careful with how we use it. And I see nothing wrong with
But it's
that.
open to anyone, so like EFF can come and...
Yeah. But interviews, they have to go through news. They don't. I don't. Particularly because it's campaign. The minute I say yes to you, I have to say yes to everybody else. Then that creates a rather complicated scenario. So that's really what it is. I don't want this to sound like they're controlling what we say.
Of course.
They don't, but they're trying to manage competition. That's why all these election ads have that message at the end. They're trying to really control competition. A few points that I don't entirely agree with in this discussion is digital being a dominant force. And the reason I don't is because the majority of South African voters are not necessarily on digital. They can afford the data that you and I can afford easily. And those people, you still find them at home. That's why you still do the knock and drops. That's why you still do some food door to door, food parcels. I was in Saldanha, there were banana packs, So you still find that a lot in South Africa, because South Africans will still go to a stadium. Yeah. South Africans will still listen to a radio station. South Africans will still go to a town hall, because that's the majority of the South African voter. That's the voter that if you ignore, you'll end up with 2 seats in parliament. That's just the reality of it. And I think the ANC knows that voter very well. They understand that voter very well. And I think Julius also understands that voter very well. That's why he's doing what he's doing. Yeah. And some parties take that voter for granted. That's why they can run an ad with a burning flag and think it's not a big deal.
That's madness.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
The digital world, it'll trend. Yeah. But in reality, one chance that they won't even care about it. Yeah. But once they know, they'll say, but they can't burn the flag. You see, that's really where we are. And I don't want us to miss the real South African voter. Yeah. The real South African voter is in a taxi, works at Checkers, and so forth and so forth. It's not some guy who is in an office running a company. That they are voters, both of them. But the numbers, they are based in these are Ukhozi listeners. Those are Mhlobwele listeners. They are the listeners. They are the people who will be voting in these elections.
And personally for you, how important are these elections?
I think, in all honesty, all elections are important, but this one feels like a turning point. And I use the word "feel" deliberately because JJ said it. The previous elections felt the same way, so it's not necessarily any different. It's almost like a few days before New Year's Eve. We all feel celebratory because, the year is about to end
expecting.
and so forth. There's an expectation.
Yeah.
I think ANC's back is going to be back in office. Because even if they lose, they're going to lose by such a small margin. They're going to borrow 2 seats from that party and 2 seats from that party, and they're back in power.
Yeah.
And for me, their journey to power is so short compared to a DA that might need 15% to get into. So I feel the importance of the elections is obvious. What for me is the confusion is that people think this is a huge turning point.
Okay.
I don't think it's a big turning point. It might be a turning point like the last local elections. Why? Because that's where we started seeing the ANC losing a few big metros like Johannesburg and the city of Tshwane. And they said, what did they call it, JJ? They said it was a collective fault. They took collective fault or something like that. Collective responsibility, that's what they said. But if you studied the ANC politics at the time, you'll realize what was really happening. There was a lot of disagreements between the mother body and the Gauteng, and there was an imposition of the Tshwane imposition of Togo Didiza. There were a lot of those dynamics. I vote in Tshwane, and I know what happened. The people in Tshwane were having a braai outside the voting stations. They had a campaign called No Sputla, No Vote. It was an obvious protest against the ANC.
Yeah.
But those are ANC voters. They didn't give that vote to anybody else. They kept it to themselves. And I can tell you, this time around, they're going to use that vote.
I want to start with, I think for these elections, can we call them the top 5 parties, right? That being obviously ANC, DA, we can throw EFF in there.
Yeah.
Are we throwing MK party in there?
Yeah.
If you call it top 5, they haven't proven themselves, but you don't have a choice.
Maybe clump them together with regional parties.
With regional, ne?
Yeah.
Okay, but let's start with the big fish, right?
Yeah.
ANC. I don't know. Why should I vote for them? What does it look like if I vote for them?
Yeah.
What do you guys think is going to happen with the ANC?
I'm not taking this one.
Mike, we can start with you.
You can start with me. Where I do slightly disagree with Dave. Why I do think that these elections are a big thing. Because if we go with your analysis, that the ANC, yes, Cyril will be the next president, or the ANC will be able to appoint the president. They'll get a majority. They'll find a few little parties to give them seats. I get that. That's fine. But I don't think people understand the implication of that in Parliament. They've had 30 years where they can do anything. They can shut down Pala Pala investigation. They can shut down Nkandla. They can shut down corruption. They can do because they got the majority by themselves. They don't need anybody to vote with them. They can go along. They've got 230 seats in Parliament. They can say, nothing to see here. Let's vote. We got the majority. They're not going to be able to do that from June this year. And I think that's dramatically different. That's why I do think that these are very, very important, because I think that there's a fundamental change. It would be like you giving 51% ownership of your business to somewhere else. You're used to having complete control. You'd say, no, I don't like that camera, move it here, move it there. Now you've got somebody out there saying, hang on, let's just talk about it first. It's a very different world. That's why I do think.
Yeah. But that's based on the assumption that they'll fall under 50.
No, even if they get to the low 50s, it's still, everyone's going to have to be in Parliament. What chance do you have of getting everybody in Parliament and awake? It's going to be, it's going to be almost impossible, because people will be ill, people will be on leave, people will be on overseas, etc., etc. Now, there's going to be parliamentary gridlock. They're not going to be able to pass laws like they have in the past. They're not going to have, because they're not going to get the majority. Right, so it's going to change.
Actually, they don't need to pass any laws now. They just need to implement them, and that happens in the executive.
Yeah. But
so they won't bother with Parliament.
ANC in this election, I think that their campaign has been lackluster. Very few posters. Some of their engagements is not like the ANC of old. There's definitely something going on there. There's no doubt about it, and we'll soon hear about it, whatever it is. But, then they rolled out the veterans, your old mates, and that was their campaign. And their campaign is, vote for us because we won't be as bad as we used to be.
Absolutely. That's the message.
I don't think that, and also understand, if they do, let's say they get 50%. That's still a drop of 7%. It's dramatic. Yeah. It's dramatic. So,
look, if I may come in there,
of course,
right?
Of course.
It's likely that they'll scrape through 50. And I'll tell you why. All the polls are putting them at 40. The latest one puts them at 43, right? But that issue about the rural vote comes in even with the polls. I'm not convinced, right, that these pollsters have gone to Malamulele in the rural area, talk to
Sample
somebody
size,
who
rural
depends
sample size.
only on grants to survive, and said to them, "Are you going to vote the ANC?" and expect that person to say no, right? So I don't believe those polls at the moment, because I get a sense that they have not taken into account the big rural vote and the massive surge in grants. 26 million people is the highest they have been. There were 2 million in 1994. People who are on grants. They are now 26. And they're even saying, no, we'll add even more grants. We're going to have something called the basic income grant. Okay?
Crazy.
So 26 million people are wholly dependent, and you can't convince them that no, even if a new government will come, you still have the grants. That's immediately a bridge too far, because your president doesn't mind to lie with a straight face and say, if you don't vote for the ANC, the grants are gone. And they have to decide whether they believe this guy or not. And it looks like they believe him, because apparently he has 77% whatever
Popularity.
approval rate, despite Pala, despite all the terrible things that you may want to assign to him, right? So if you take that element of trust, if I may put it that way, right, and then you take what he says, which may not be completely true. By the way, and I'll say that guardedly when I say, because, you know, the TG of the ANC came to my show and said, actually, everywhere where the DA has taken over, they've cut the grants. And she was referring to free water, free electricity. Says once the DA took over in Gauteng, in Joburg, they cut the free water, the free electricity. So he says, there's your proof. We're not just talking to say the grants are going to go. So the grants thing is a big election issue.
Sure.
Right? So you need to temper your expectations about the ANC falling at 42. That one I doubt.
And
okay?
and what are people saying on the ground regarding the grants?
No, that's what they are saying. The people are they are dependent on the grants.
So,
350. You think 350? I mean, you know, I was just having dinner with somebody or lunch yesterday, and he says this meal will be more than 350. Yet somebody gets the 350 for a whole month to survive on.
not somebody, 26 million.
No, it's not 26, because it's various categories. There's child grants,
Like
there's pensions, and so on. But the ones
still a lot.
what
17 million is the highest number. Then it comes down in groupings.
But what made it leap to 26 was this 350.
Yeah.
Okay. And the ANC knows that that's an election issue. That's why they've extended the grant. That grant was meant to be for COVID, by the way. Remember, they extended it thrice already.
Yeah. And it's not going anywhere.
And they don't have an intention to remove it. So that's the first thing about the ANC. Secondly, there's huge panic in the ANC about the fact that they may actually lose power. Because all the opposition parties are punting this thing. They're going to fall within under 50. It's not a fact. That's what they wish, that they'll fall under 50. Okay? Frankly, I wish they fall under 50. By the way, don't get me wrong. Okay? Because I do think this country needs change. We need a counterforce, because once you've got a counterforce, you can have more movement forward. You're going to have, like you're saying,
push and pull,
more accountability, right? So it's not a bad thing. I agree with Khalima, although today he won't repeat that. What he said, they must lose elections in order to learn a lesson. But he won't repeat it. I've interviewed him 4 times in the last 3 years, and he has not managed to repeat it. He said no, he said it, but not to me. He said it to the BBC. He didn't say it to Soweto TV. He said it to the whole world. But when you come and say, Chief, do you still stand by what you said? He'll say no, right? Because I don't know what gets into them. One of the veterans, and they will remain nameless, said to me, hey, we're from this lying campaign. He was talking about the veterans going up and down. So I talked to one of them. So I phoned him to say, hey, Chief, what the hell? He says,
see you on TV.
He says, hey, we're from this lying thing. So they know that they are lying. It's not me just giving them a label. They know that. How do you look at our people after 30 years of failing them and say, give us another 30 years? Tali Tambo was on my show. You know the gentleman, people of the South?
People of the South.
Yeah. He gave me a cushion. That's nice. He brought the cushion. People of the South. It's in my lounge now. You know, when he was having that show, nobody would look my direction, you know, to interview me. There was nothing to
Yeah.
there, But at least he brought the cushion.
You were a government official at the time, though.
Yeah, I know, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't make it to people of the South.
So you're part of the
quickly,
liars.
He's just said no. It's not. He's not. He's very clear. He's saying the ANC needs another 30 years. That's what the listing. The ANC needs another 30 years. What are you guys talking about? Colonialism was 300 years. Why do you expect us to turn around the ship in 30 years? So that's the narrative of the ANC. 30 years of democracy. They are lucky because the elections are happening within 30 years. So they have got to get us to celebrate 30 years. And while we are now unhappy with them. So with all those factors, the ANC may not fall below 50.
But Pradeep, do you think there's factions in the ANC?
Yeah, ANC always has factions, but however, one thing that President Cyril Ramaphosa has managed to do with this ANC is mute the factional battles.
Okay.
We don't even if they're there, we don't see them
They're
as
not glaring.
openly. They're not glaring as
But
they have been in the
can you
past.
just break it down? Who's for him? Who's for against?
I wouldn't know because they probably change every day based on whatever reasons they choose to change. But he's done well. Correct me if I'm wrong, JJ. This year's factional battle, or this past few years of Cyril Ramaphosa's factional battle has been very muted. In the past, it used to be very clear, very loud.
Everybody's saying what they want.
Exactly. During the times of the Premier League, remember we used to have a Premier League, and that's why we had the NASREC elections that ended with the CR17 and all of that.
Yeah.
That was a clear factional battle, but we don't see that now in the current ANC. So I don't think that is one of their problems. Let me tell you where their problem is very quickly. MK party is a serious problem
For real.
for the
Yeah.
ANC.
Yo.
It is an extension of the faction.
Yes.
It is a faction.
The disgruntled faction.
The disgruntled faction that didn't get whatever they wanted, and they decided to leave and create something new. They're having their own internal challenges there, because when you got together for wrong reasons, and I'll use that
Don't
phrase
use
very
collapses.
carefully.
Look at Cope.
Yeah, you look at Cope
Yeah.
and many others. You'll end up with your own challenges. Unlike EFF, when EFF left, well, they didn't leave. They were fired.
expelled.
Yes.
Yeah, they were fired, and they had to rethink on their own. What do we do next? And for a while, Julius was out of politics.
Yeah.
He even said it that he was planning something else, to
farm,
be a
yeah,
farmer.
yeah.
And then they decided, let's try this thing and let's move it to Joburg, not do a regional party and be a Limpopo party.
Yeah.
And it's done really well. You have to give it to Julius 10 years.
Absolutely.
And he's achieved what he's achieved. It's an incredible feat. But MK is a serious problem for the ANC. That's why they work so hard to try to...
Get them off.
Off
on
the ballot,
et
everything.
cetera, and the IEC.
Because it's a factional vote.
So I think it's important to also kind of like put the landscape and make it a little bit more clear. MK is massive because it attacks their largest regional base. So the KZN. So they are taking from their biggest slice.
Yeah.
Right? If they were anywhere else, it would be like tricky, but they would be okay with it. The problem is that, remember, we come from and we still are in a phase of this demigod political sort of sphere where it matters. For instance, I don't understand why we still have people's faces on ballots, right? I don't, because what does it actually do? Other than the fact that if they know somebody, the reputation of the person on that ballot is more important than the actual name of the party, in my opinion. Because if it wasn't, you would just be able to put the name of the party.
Yeah.
And people would know, okay, if I vote for these guys, remember, not this guy or this lady, these guys, this is what I'm likely to get. So what you find with the MK is that MK is going after their biggest slice. And that is problematic because they are literally taking all those disgruntled people. I was at the last elective conference of the African National Congress. And the most interesting thing was being on the ground and just being able to listen to ordinary members.
Yes.
Like the people that actually decide.
Of course.
Because the others don't decide. The 4,000 people that are there, they decide.
Yes.
Right? And what you realize is that the push and pull was so strong at the time, right? It was Zweli Mkhize, versus Cyril, right? Yeah. And there were a lot of compromises that had to be made that were happening on the fly.
Wow.
Like you could see it on the fly that, okay, Paul Mashatile is moving a little bit faster now. He's going to go talk to someone.
Damn.
This person's come back. He's crestfallen. You could see it, right?
When you phrase entry,
right? Right?
Yeah, they had a phrase called entry.
And the reason why KZN messed up that conference, in my view, they messed it up, was because KZN came there very arrogant. They thought they were going to win. They didn't caucus with other parties in the ANC sphere. They arrived there, Petit Taul, Nation. They were there saying, we're here for a fight and we're going to do this thing. Remember, conference, you've got to get votes from elsewhere. And that's what happened. Then they wanted the main positions, but there were 7 positions up. They walked out with 0, KZN. 0 out of 7. So from that moment on, KZN felt powerless within the ANC.
Oh, I see.
They were like, we're the biggest voting bloc and we have nothing. We have no one in the top 7. Literally nobody. And then from there, you've got this gorilla who used to bully everybody, having absolutely nothing. So it then lends itself really well to establish branches. Because think about it. The ANC is nothing without its branches. And if you are to convert, if David is a branch member, right, in, let's say, Mhlatuse, right, if he is part of our disgruntled guy, he can easily turn his entire branch of 600 people.
Then you
so immediately turn those people. So that's why MK is a problem. Because the people you used to pick up the phone, maybe from HQ and call, are not picking up.
The button
because they went with David. So that's why that's why MK is a big thing. That's right?
crazy.
That's why it's their biggest thing.
And then what's this? Okay, I want to ask this notion that Cyril is in bed with the whites. What's that all about? Does that impact the elections?
Maybe let me give my perspective, then we'll jump over. So I don't think there's ever been a democratically elected president in South Africa that hasn't been in with the whites.
Okay.
Like, I think we should kind of have that conversation first. Because when you have that conversation, you then understand that what are the building blocks to sustain and maintain a country? You need business. Business is white. So what do we expect this person to do? What do you expect Mandela to do? What do you expect Thabo Mbeki to do? Kgalema Motlanthe, not so much. But like they never gave him like passwords to the laptop. but what? Yeah, no, like what do we expect them to do? Not there's a story, right? There's a story, and it could be folklore around what happened during COVID, where our government called the World Bank and those institutions, right, Bretton Woods, and they said, we need money during COVID. They called a billionaire here in South Africa, and he picked up the phone and said, but that guy doesn't talk to me. And they said, but is South Africa still good enough for the money? He's like, yeah, but get him to call me. This is folklore. I'm not saying that this happened. We're just saying that this person was on a golf course, and he picked up the phone and apparently told the president, he's like, yeah, call me on Monday. I'm playing golf. So you have to understand that what you're asking, right, is whether or not the ruling class, not the political class, the ruling class agrees with what's going on. And maybe I don't have that answer for you, but just look at what is happening and what isn't happening. And then you start to have that discussion or that conversation a little bit more nuanced, understanding that you need white people. We're part of a global system, unfortunately, right? We don't have the opportunity because we have never, in the 30 years, in my view, we haven't built the institutions, the business institutions, to have a good enough foundation that we can say that this would not matter.
I see.
You understand?
I see,
if people, if World Bank chairs and whatnot can pick up the phone and call a white person in South Africa, and it shouldn't be the case. We should be working in South Africa together, right? It shouldn't matter.
Ooh, okay.
I think the answer to that question shouldn't be so complicated. It's nice what you're saying, but that's too complex. Cyril Ramaphosa raised more than R500 million, okay, from the private sector to be president. And you and I are still none the wiser about who
that person
actually, including him. He says,
but he's been saying it's been happening. It's not just Cyril. He's saying...
No. But we asked the question, is Cyril with the whites?
Okay.
And I'm saying yes. Yeah. But the answer is not so long-winded. We just look at him when he campaigned to be president for the first time. He raised R500 million. And then I asked him on 2 interviews, I hope he's not watching this because I need him to come to the
That
interview
one.
before the elections.
Send it to him.
Right, to say, Mr. President, who has funded you? No, I don't know. I was arm's length. I said, really? You know, one of the people who funded you gave 55 million, 1%. You don't think you should write a letter of thanks? Or, at least know who he is and just say thank you, man. You know? You understand? So he's lying to us with a straight face. That's why he goes to court to say the CR17 statements mustn't be released. So that we can't join the dots to know who is so invested. But we do know overall that the white business is invested. It's not a secret.
Your third secret.
It's not even a big nuanced thing. It's a straightforward thing, which is known. He raised R500 million. So now when I got to the second interview, he had been now to the second conference. And I say, how much did you raise this time?
Yeah.
No, we raised a lot of money. But this time they made sure that it doesn't leak how much it is.
Yeah.
But it's clear that had to be maintained, right? Because somehow he appeals, and that's what the president must. But president must appeal to all communities.
Okay.
He can't appeal only to blacks. He's got to appeal to black and white and colored and Indian. And that's it.
A spokesman for the whites. You know. we meet we meet every Tuesday in Stellenbosch. And we decide these things. But once again, it's not nearly as complex even as that. There's a very simple thing, and that is that you grow this media empire until the point where you are full of money. Your future, your wealth, everything depends on a good decision being made. And you're going to take those resources to get the best outcome for your empire. Right? Because those same people that we're saying, guide Cyril, etc., at one point were guiding the National Party in South Africa. Yeah. And then when they realized that the National Party was going to lose them their money, they pulled out and funded the ANC. Okay, so, it happens in every country, in every system, and it makes sense. Patrice Motsepe doesn't sit on his wallet. He also spends money.
Across everywhere.
Right? Across wherever he thinks he's going to get a return. Yeah. Right? And it's important that you get a return. However, I think that these elections are showing one thing, and that is that business that everybody is calling white business, I challenge whether it's actually white business, because it's usually shareholders that hold the majority, and the majority of shareholders in South Africa is everybody through pension funds, but that's a separate argument. Let's call it white business for this purpose, right? They did not get the return out of Cyril Ramaphosa in the last 5 years. They didn't. And I'll tell you what I mean by that, because this isn't hard to work out. This thing where he passes the NHI the other day, right, is catastrophic for billion-dollar businesses in South Africa. For many millions of South Africans, it's going to be catastrophic legislation. And that is a big finger to those people that would have funded him. So you can't then say, well, you got to keep on funding him. Well, you're not going to fund a guy that's going to take away your livelihood. Right? Yeah. So, and business is like that everywhere. That's...
but on the NHI, please, we should not panic about this. This thing is just not going to happen. It's too complex to implement. But remember, a politician has to appeal to the base, the lowest common denominator, right? While managing the top end. That's why he's left the door open to say, we can still talk about how to implement this best. These guys will be out of power by before the NHS is implemented. Some of them will be dead before it's implemented. Thirdly, if a new government comes, that will be their first agenda to reverse that legislation. They know this. That's why they had to pass the law before the elections. Because if there was nothing of that sort, they would have waited the election to pass because people are complaining and so they say, oh, let's talk. There's no need, because in any event, they themselves are admitting it's going to take 15 years to implement. So why rush to pass it before next week?
Yeah, but JJ, know, it's a bit like we have this thing out and I pull out my gun and I put it down here.
Yeah.
Right? You'd rather I didn't pull the gun out. You'd all feel a lot more comfortable if I actually didn't bring my gun inside. I'm saying these are...
It's a fair point he's making, but if you really look at it and you understand how it works, you'll know that it's an impossible case, particularly for South Africa right now. We are a broke country. We cannot apply any of the things that the NHI speaks of. But you're right in saying that why sign it in the first place?
Because it's appealing to the base. That's why Panyaza is saying after the election you can walk into any hospital and you'll be given medicine.
We've got to understand that it's going to have almost immediate implications. Because if you were a young doctor, right now. Whether it's going to take 5 years or 10 years, you're a 30-year-old doctor. Are you going to wait until you're 40 before you leave the country? Or you're going to leave now? You know, I'm saying we understand why he passed it now, but it's at the expense of a very important part of the country that could be in trouble because he passed it.
I want to take it back to the white business that I was talking about, right? So from what you guys are saying, we've established that he is in bed with the white business. Does that affect my vote in any way? Should I be worried about that?
I don't think you should. I don't think you should because the next person, whoever they may be, is going to be in bed with those same people. So it's like it's a zero-sum game. Zero-sum
I
game.
think the real phrasing is he's in bed with business.
Okay.
Yeah.
And business is white.
Yes.
What needs to be fixed about this country is to cultivate black business.
Okay.
And make it solid. Then the question will be very different.
Got you.
You see, so and that's really where the hard work of this
Yeah.
country is supposed to be, is cultivating black, hundreds and thousands of black billionaires.
Let's
By black, what do you mean?
I mean, a person of your skin color.
Okay, because there's a document, right? It's the industrialization, Black Industrialist document. I urge every single person, there's a report, actually. I urge every single person to go read that report, even though they don't put the numbers that they've put, like funding these businesses. Just go look at who's being funded. That's all I'm going to say. Just go look. Because there's a huge problem, right? And this is where rhetoric really irks me and gets to me. Because we throw this thing of black like willy-nilly. And for me, when I looked at what was being said versus what's in the report, and everybody can do this, just literally go Google Black Industrialist Report. I think it's 2022 or 2022 South Africa. Don't even look at the company names. Just look at the person and go down the list. All of them. And then you'll start to understand why certain people they're pissed about this whole thing of black industrialism and black industrialists in South Africa. Because we need to have that conversation because the money is not getting to black people. Utaki. It's not getting to Utaki. And for me, as an entrepreneur, I have a problem with that. Because if you are trying to start a PVC company or factory, you're not going to get funding, my brother. But somebody is going to get funding for the PVC factory. And just go to that report and see who's getting the funding.
That's crazy. Okay, before we move...
Nationalization of the banks is not a bad idea.
Hey, you want to start that topic?
No, I don't. I don't.
DA one.
Yeah, we have to go to
Before we move on to the next party, so in closing, what does it look like if I vote for ANC?
It's more of the same.
More of the same.
Yeah.
More of the same.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to change.
Yeah.
Okay.
More of the
Well,
same.
I don't know, man, if nothing is going to change.
If it's ANC only, one party stayed again for another 30 years.
Yes.
Then why should anything change? Because you are doing the same thing, expecting different results. You're
There's
voting
one
the same
thing that is going to change, though. And I'd say this because one thing that we haven't been very good at in South Africa is understanding competition. And in the build-up to this election, for the first time, there's genuine competition. We're arguing about whether the ANC is going to get 45 or 52.
55, yeah.
Either way,
50 plus
the world's going to change.
Yeah.
Why are the lights suddenly on? The lights aren't on because they're burning more diesel. The lights are on, and this is for real,
consequence.
because the government, the ANC, finally got off their backside and went and got the power plants working. Said to people, you better do your job. They're now boasting about a 70% EAF, energy availability factor. We should be running at 85% EAF. We were running down in the 50s. That's why we couldn't keep the lights on. And that's only because that bad thing did not have consequences in the past because they would stay in power. Now it has consequences.
Yeah.
So maybe...
No, the load shedding
Maybe
exposed
they have
them,
a
man.
good CEO
They exposed them.
Yeah.
Maybe they have a good CEO.
Maybe they have a better one.
Good CEO. It's possible now they have a minister. They've never had a minister before. Now they have a minister who reports to us every Monday morning.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a lot of change.
And that's because of competition, because their vote is in danger. Their majority is in danger.
So next party, DA. Where are we feeling with DA, JJ?
Yeah, they've conducted a terrible campaign. They're shooting themselves in the foot and so on. I think the biggest mistake they made. Remember, you got 90% of this country's black people. Okay? So if you're going to be in government, you got to go into that 90% and impress that 90, No point in just hankering to your old constituency of a few white people. That doesn't work, right? So they've not managed to break away from being seen as a white party, right? That's why when they had an opportunity to vote for a black woman, forget about Muslim man. Recently, when they had an opportunity to
Didn't they ship her off?
yeah, no, not that one. Papa lads, who happened to be a mayor of Joburg, an MBCHB, a clever. I don't want to say clever black, but I'm just saying it's not like he was gonna fail to lead the DA. You know, if you told me she's incompetent, then I will understand. But here was a strategic choice.
Yeah.
And why is that strategic? Why is it glaring that they made the wrong choice? They get to a multi-party charter.
Yeah.
And then they admit that John Steenhuisen can be president. Themselves. They're saying we can win. Even if we are number one, we already know John Steenhuisen can be president. Why did they choose John Steenhuisen? When they were electing a new leadership, were they not wanting to govern the country?
Yeah.
Right? So with their own mouth, they have told us that to put John Steenhuisen, forget about the fact that he was only assistant at 9. That's irrelevant. What's relevant now is they chose a wrong guy to lead the cause. So I have a problem with that. Secondly, they don't seem to be able to shake off the thing that they don't seem to have a plan or a coherent message around redress. Now, if you go back to the fact that 90% of people are marginalized, you just talked about the industrialists, and you just tried to say more Indians are funded. Well, that's you, right? Then you got to be able to say, how do we deal with that inequality? We are the most unequal society in the world. It's not a slogan.
Yeah, it's a reality.
It's a World Bank report. So you can't ignore inequality with some fancy slogans. No, race can no longer be a criteria. We must just look at other things like gender. I don't know whether they can teach us about gender now. We've always talked about gender as part of the milieu of transformation. Right. So I think those are two things. One, wrong choice of leader. And yes, blacklisted me because I said this in an opinion piece. But you know, it's part of having a thin skin. When you're a politician, you must have a thick skin. You know, all the people who are on my show, I've insulted them many times over the years, but they still come for more. Except him. He said, you know, why do you want to talk to a dumb cop? So there's the wrong choice of leader, and then incoherence in policy on key things. They are being caught fighting employment equity legislation, right? And I can mention other things that they are doing that are not too useful in terms of appealing to the base that can make you government. Because that's what politics are about. You want to get into power so you can then implement your policies to change things. So there are many things I can say about the DA. I mean, I'm not going to talk about the Benin flag, really. I'm just going to talk about those two to say, at some point, I thought there could be an alternative, a real alternative, when they were starting to see that we've reached a plateau in terms of our support base. We now need to go into this 90 because there are people in this 90 who can believe in us. You know, so they have rushed decision to get rid of Musi because they lost some votes to the EFF. Was a wrong idea. This was the beginning of a wrong decision. Then they went even to the other extreme to bring Helen Zille back by back door. Helen Zille is still in charge now.
Yeah,
you really think John Steenhuisen is in charge? Come on.
Thank you,
my
sir.
views on the DA is exactly that. Their core base is tiny, and it's not growing. It's not like there's an extra 5 million white people that came to South Africa. Now, there's a lot of work that they're trying to do to attract a black audience. However, I think by losing a lot of black leaders, that is what has affected them. Losing Musi was a big deal for the DA, whether they'll ever admit it. Firing Musi.
Losing is like...
It fell. Yes. No, that was a bad move. Yeah. And now, I hung out with my dentist, and we were talking politics, as we do in South Africa, and we were talking about the next elections. And I asked her, who are you voting for? Said, interesting, I know who I'm not voting for. And I voted for them before. And I said, oh, who's that? Said the DA. And I said, why? I'm Muslim. I can't vote for them. I know who they support in the war in the Middle East. So I cannot support them. And it's a clear decision. I'm not even confused. I may not know who I'm voting for right now, but I know who I'm not voting for. And I think that is a vote that the DA didn't really measure properly.
Yeah.
And to be honest, to show that the DA's position is quite tricky, they're making noise about small parties. They're making noise about the PA in the Western Cape, Rise Mzansi,
NCC even. In
do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
It shows that when you're fighting with smaller guys, you're showing that your strength is not that much. And now I saw John Steenhuisen making fun of EFF a few days ago, saying that they're going to the polls, really just justifying the polls, the new polls that says they are number 3 and EFF is the loser, and EFF is going to lose from MK. EFF can't lose from MK because MK voters never voted for MK to start with. Those are Zuma people that have always voted for Zuma, even when he was in the ANC.
Yes.
They have never voted for EFF. So the real issue with the DA, and it really saddens me because a strong opposition is necessary in South Africa. And I worry that
alternative.
Yes, and I worry that the DA got a lot of things wrong. And by losing a black vote. A black vote, you need lots of it.
They lost it deliberately.
Like, and I was at the conference in Midrand. And what's like super interesting about the DA is that their leadership is 100% not reflective of their party base. Like it's like the craziest thing for me. It's like the people on the floor don't look like the people on stage. And it's that disconnect that is so literal that they don't see it that scares me. It's like you don't see, like how can you not see that the stage is different from the people on the floor? And then you realize that there's got to be some sort of propaganda brainwashing that happens in that direction, because I don't necessarily feel, and having gone to both conferences, right, having gone to the ANC conference and having gone to the DA conference, I didn't feel like the people here, like they could change things, right? It didn't feel like the people, didn't feel like there were blocks, because you go to a conference, right? If you've gone to a lot of conferences, you hear that they're singing in that corner and they're singing for a candidate that they want. They want another person here. Those people want. And then they break for lunch and they come back and those people are spoken to those people. Now those people are not singing the same song. So you see the dynamics, right, of inter-party push and pull, right? Those conversations. That thing doesn't happen there. No. It's like everyone went there knowing that, John is going to get this thing. But then look at the rest of them. There's nothing that says within the DA that we've thought about this demographic within our people. There's nothing that says we've thought about this type of person in our leadership. Because the people on the floor have to be able to see themselves and their future on stage. If they don't see that, right, it starts to become like, oh, well, this is boring, right? We're just here to cheer for these guys. And that's what happens in a lot of parties. You've got to have the young person. You've got to have women in power. You've got to get the more agile people. You've got to get the older people. It's got to look reflective of the entire voting populace. And that's what's not there. The second thing with the DA is that there's a narrative that's going around where it says that the DA doesn't know how to govern black people. Like, and wow. There's nobody who's actually ever come to me and said, no, they actually do. And I'll ask you, where? Right?
I had a chat with Helen Ziller.
Yeah. She felt that she was doing a great job
in the Western Cape.
And in Tshwane, where you're from, how does that feel there?
Well, they feel they're doing well.
You see, they feel they're doing well. Do you think they're doing well? You live there.
The lived experience is different.
100%.
But I can tell you though, her defense, and here her defense. We are not, as government, and I'm putting myself in her shoes. As government, my job is not to better your life. It's to ensure that you get all the services you need while you live your life. Your streets will be clean, potholes won't be there, your garbage will be collected on time, and so forth and so forth and so forth and so forth.
In the City Bowl in Cape Town, sure, that's possible. That happens in the City Bowl in Fresno.
Her argument is it happens also in Khayelitsha. I'm just defending what she said.
Does she go? Have you seen pictures of her in Khayelitsha recently? No. Why do you think that's the case?
I'm just defending what she said.
So this is always this is the problem, and rightfully so, right? But JJ makes a really good point. They had an opportunity to get clever blacks, as Zuma had called them, over the line. Do you understand the fact that if they had all of those people, right? If they had the Musis, if they had the Bazibukos, if they had those people, suddenly the people here look at the people there and they go, Aibo. Like, I also went to school. I also went to think. I want to get on board with this thing, right?
Yeah.
Because I can relate to this leader. When there is that breakdown in relations or the relativity between the two of us, it becomes harder. Then you've got the colored vote, which they've almost, in past elections, they've always kind of fortified that vote.
Yeah.
Right? I feel like in this one, it's a little bit tenuous for them.
Because of Gayton.
But just generally because everybody's like now looking. It's 30 years. Everyone's looking and saying, man, has our life actually gotten better?
Got you.
Do we have particular services in certain things? Does the My City not go into my hood, right, in Cape Town? Does it stop there outside on the N1 or the N2 and then turn and then go back and then I've got to get into another taxi
arrow
to get in, right? Or take a golden arrow. So the lived experience of colored people is now front and center. And they're asking themselves, why can't we run the Western Cape? And I've always thought to myself, a lot of colored people and a little bit of ANC, right? Or black people. And colored people can run the Western Cape.
I see.
And then suddenly, the prioritization of services can finally be something that is ubiquitous for everybody or that starts to be shared. Because the key thing with getting into Cape Town and understanding the stark reality of people, right, is that I will not go to any township in Cape Town because I know that there is an aggressive poverty that exists there that doesn't exist anywhere else in South Africa. And I've been to every single corner of this country. And it worries me, right? And maybe I'm just a person who goes, no, maybe this thing, whatever. Maybe I'm just a scaredy cat. Maybe ngesaba. Maybe out in ngesaba, right?
Recently,
so the truth is that when you look at
how was it, Dave, when you went?
How was it?
Look, reality of it is, my interpretation of townships, they look the same everywhere in the country.
Yeah.
The texture of townships,
the fabric,
is the same. There's no space to play for kids, and there's no all of that. You know how it feels and looks like. And I DJ and play at townships. My mom's house is in the township, so I go to townships a lot, and they look the same. So Khalicha for me is no different from any other. However, I'll tell you, it's cleaner.
Oh, wow.
Small but important detail. And I don't know if that is the only detail that matters. And I think a conversation like this will really, ventilate if that detail matters at all. And that's exactly what what's her name, Helen Zille is saying. Is saying, I run a clean government in the Western Cape. It may not be making people rich.
Yes.
What I don't like about the Western Cape, for me, is a city that makes it difficult for the people who are born in it to live in it.
Yes.
For me, that's what really unsettles me about the Western Cape, is that it's such an expensive city for people who were born there.
Yeah, it's like it's made for tourists.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I look at it and I say people who have memories of having a flat in town, or actually a home in town.
Try get that now.
live.
Try get that now.
You see what I mean? But where the DA's real voter is going to go, is going to rise Mzansi.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mike, you've been quiet.
I've been quiet because it's really sad. It's sad for South Africa. And much like Mr. Thabane over here, I'm also on that same list that you're on. The blacklist.
The blacklist.
The blacklist.
Oh, okay.
For saying pretty much the same things that you said. And
So the list exists.
the list exists
never
in
From
my
the DA.
pocket. Yeah.
It's a real thing.
Then I'm not on the list then. I got
Yeah.
Helen
It,
Zille.
No, I got Helen Zille as a fine. We're fine with Helen Zille.
Yeah.
It's John's 10 years and where's a thin skin. Helen has a thick skin. She can come here and debate with all
she'll
of you.
be happy to do it. But the real point, and I've said it before, is that they behave like they're looking for Sia Khaleesi when what they really need is Rassie Erasmus.
I got you. I got you.
So, it's the other point that I've made is that why is it that some political parties feel that they should behave differently to the way that you and I and everybody else has to behave in our businesses?
Yeah.
Now, if I've got a business that's a restaurant and it started off in an area that was white, and the area starts changing, and the restaurant starts changing. I've got to reflect those changes. I've had to do it in my own business, right? And that's why I'm a little bit uncomfortable with this white business tag, because those white businesses, when you say white businesses, and you're saying Standard Bank's a white business with a black CEO, when does it become a South African business? Do you know what I mean? These companies have moved along because their clientele demands that they move along. But so when I interviewed the Freedom Front Plus on the State of the Nation, you think to yourself, that's the only business that can be 100% white.
And
Right? The rest of us has to reflect the people that we're trying to woo your customers.
Yeah.
And it's sad because with the demise of the ANC to the extent that it's gone down, they were best placed to take over, to capitalize, and instead they're going to be terribly excited if they get 20% plus whites. How bad is that?
Yeah.
Like, come on, the
So
score's
they squandered their
10-0.
chances.
You're losing 10-0 and you've scored 10 own goals. It's crazy.
Before we move on,
their last performance was 20%. So she's right. If they get 21%,
The polls put
they
them
would
at
have
18.
they would have done well.
so we think some of those voters are going to where?
To Rise Mzansi.
Rise.
Rise Mzansi, Action SA. That's why there's talk of a multi-party charter. Because you're preparing to lose. That's multi-party charter. to
moonshot
me is-
pact.
No, but that one,
That's exactly
that one you must give to John Steenhuisen, because he realized they're gonna lose.
Yeah.
So they need friends.
Fortify. You must fortify.
But they must need friends before the election, not after, so that they can hold them away from
from
going to
other
the
friends.
ANC or going to somewhere else. So I think on that one, maybe we can give him,
half a mark.
Yeah, half a mark there, just to say.
You guys are mean.
Yeah, you could see,
Doesn't like John.
you could see you're going to fail. So let's get friends to help us to succeed. I think the moonshot thing is dead in the water, and I did tell you on your podcast. Okay, it's dead in the water. Not only because it's a fraction. They are not getting even to 40%. All of them.
Please just explain what the moonshot pact is for.
All right. So John Steenhuisen basically said no. EFF is going to be the worst thing that can happen in South Africa. So in order to stop that and stop them and the ANC together, they need to bring everybody else together.
Okay.
So ideally, all the parties would have joined the moonshot, or now what is called the multi-charter.
Yes.
Yeah, they changed this name because they didn't want to be under the shadow of John Steenhuisen. So they said, let's give it a new name as we meet. Right? So
And who's on it? It's Action SA.
Action SA, IFP, DA,
ACDC.
and then a number of reds and mice. To be honest, parties nobody knows anything about.
They
Okay.
bring 1 or 2 seats sometimes.
Yeah. So that's not gonna fly. I really don't think so. And I want, when you get to the EFF, I want to talk about this. So they've even couched that EFF and ANC is a doomsday coalition.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, the doomsday for me is the moonshot, but we can talk about that when we talk about the EFF.
All right. So in closing, what does it look like if DA wins?
No, don't win.
It won't win. There's no conversation.
Yeah, you don't win.
Unless they
They've messed it up for themselves.
I also don't think DA was
trying to win.
trying to ever win.
Okay.
Because if they were, they would be making moves that look like they're trying
Okay,
to
let
win.
me ask rather than what does it mean if I vote for DA?
It's a waste
Do
of
you live in the Western Cape?
No.
Now, there's one positive to voting for them. Seriously, seriously, and that is that they've been very strong in Parliament. They've been very, very important in holding the government to account. They've been very good at taking up the legal battles when the government has dropped the ball. Because if it wasn't for them, who would have done it? So. I don't think
there's opposition.
Yeah, I don't think a vote for the DA is a wasted vote,
Okay.
right? And I say that purely
It's an
because
opposition vote.
they've been probably the sort of head boy in the school. They've been the one over there, the Karen. That is really
The
what
one who
got me
tells
into trouble.
everyone you're too noisy.
That says.
So if DA, let's just say in a hypothetical world, DA were to win, do you think like all the streets, everything in the country would work as they proclaim? Like,
That's what they want you to think.
but do you think it would happen though?
No.
Why?
I disagree.
Because the entrenched policies, the entrenched policies of the ANC will be very hard to reverse Because if you do that, you then have to take away. They say we don't want PE, cool. We don't want grants. We want to scale back grants. Okay, so just of those two, I mean, JJ was saying, right? The NHI and those type of things are there to look sexy to your base, right? So if you were to come in and say, all of the stuff those other guys did is out, people go, oh, chillax. And they've said, like, we don't want this thing, we don't want that thing. So if they were to win, they would reverse a lot of things, and then there'd be a lot of chaos.
Okay. If you want to be in the opposition, you can vote for the DA. They will be good there in the opposition.
You need a strong opposition.
A strong opposition.
Every political party. Otherwise, the ANC will
You need a counter force.
Can I tell you a side note? John at the KZN rally. So Babes Wetum was performing and he was sitting right behind her. And they asked him how the show was. He said, I had the best seat in the house.
That can't be true, man.
That's fair.
That can't be true. Now we've gone back to typical podcasting show.
No, leave John alone.
Anyway, okay, EFF, where we at? EFF.
I like the EFF. I like their politics, but I think they're scoring an own goal with the immigration thing. South Africans are very uneasy with open borders. It's not even something that's debatable to the average South African. So that's why it's for me. And having had a conversation with Floyd, they seem to be happy to score that goal. You know, because they truly believe in the bigger picture of Africa. But my biggest worry with them is if your kids at home are hungry, you can't worry about the whole township. You have to be worried about your own household. And that's really where the the EFF gets it wrong, in my opinion. But other than that, you know, some of their political positions make sense. However, some of it is just rhetoric. Whether it'll happen. I remember I asked Floyd, I said to you, you want a open Africa and a united Africa. But what if your president next door is not interested? And the one after that is not interested. So why is it a narrative that matters to you now in South African politics? Because you haven't done enough groundwork for that. Why does it matter now? Why do you bring it to the table in this conversation right now? Well, it's something they believe in, and it's something that they feel it is part of their narrative as a generation. In this generation, they quote Fanon and they make it clear that this is the generation that will prove and will achieve these goals of economic emancipation.
Zimasa?
I think I like the EFF's energy. The energy, right? Because I think what misses, again, it's this whole analogy of who's on the floor, who's on stage. And the truth is that to a millennial like myself, I look at them and I say, these guys kind of look like me, right? I may not agree with a lot of their policies, but we could sit and debate them. Like there's a feeling that with the others, you can't even talk about certain things, right?
They're off the table.
Yeah, it's like, no, you can't talk about that thing, Chief. And that becomes a problem, right? I think that definitely the EFF on the open borders thing, they've got it wrong. And they've got it wrong because the unfortunate thing is that that's their base. Their base is a lot of young people who are not employed. And those people are feeling as if the illegal immigrants who are in the country are taking their jobs. And because of that, there's a huge disconnect between what they're saying as a collective and what's on the ground. Because those same people are the ones that must now come to a rally or a community meeting and you say to them, you know, we're one with our African brothers. And then they go back and say, but like my lived experience is a bit different to what those guys are saying. But I still feel like we need new blood. We have to open the opportunities for new political parties, new ideas. We don't have to agree with everybody or with everything that everyone is saying. But you need to then say, based on my values as a voter, what am I ticking and what am I ticking off relative to the EFF or DA or ANC that feels good enough for me to give them my vote, right? Don't overthink it. I think a lot of people kind of overthink it where now you start having people saying to you, no, but like just go in and then go to a protest vote. I think that's stupid. That's stupid. Like think about what is on the table and who best represents the closest to what you want in the South Africa that you believe we should be going in. And then at the end of the day, they'll count the votes. They'll tell you if you were part of the right guys or not.
But Mike, where are you standing at?
My stance, gets a little bit clear. I think that the EFF would be catastrophic for South Africa. Absolutely catastrophic. And I think that, with the best respects to the people, yes, they've got energy and they may be young. Their policies, if you read their manifesto, it's craziness. It's madness. This stuff has been tried in at least 50 countries with devastating effects in everywhere. It has not worked anywhere. South Africa would look like Venezuela without the oil, right? We would look like Cuba without the sugar. There is nothing there. And, this is a modern world. Everybody's interconnected, right? What they are putting forward as a policy is 1950s stuff. It is so catastrophic. It wouldn't take us a year to go down the drain. It would take 2 days. Right.
What are some of those policies?
Some of the policies. Well, obviously you've got the open borders thing.
Yeah.
You've got just sort of handing out money. Now everybody likes grants, but where's the money going to come from? There is no industrial policy. The state's going to control everything. You will not have any property rights. They talk about land, but what they actually manifest is property rights. So you, me, no one will be able to own a house. The government owns it all. Somebody in Pretoria, maybe you know them, sits there and says, okay, you can have a house in Sandton, but you can have a house in Kroonstad. And then if they decide later on that, we've changed our mind, in fact, my cousin will take your house in Sandton. If you take away property rights, business disappears tomorrow, because property rights extends to things like copyright, trademarks, your factories, your products. So this idea has been tried before. This is exactly what Fidel Castro did in 1959, right? And that's why they're still driving cars from the 50s. It is not difficult to work out where this would go to. The rand would go to 1,000 to the dollar, right? We wouldn't be able to even import petrol. I mean, it would just be a disaster, and it would happen immediately. Every professional would flee the country.
So just before you come in, I don't think that, I'm not affiliated to EFF, but I think what they are saying is that they want land rights, not property rights per se. So they want land to belong to the state, not the property. The house will still be yours. So actually, I think
How does that work? So let's just say the state owns the land and you own the building, right? Now, you know that because they own the land, at any minute now they can take that land away from you because they own it. Because they own it. The state owns the land.
You own the property.
You don't own the property. You'll own the building on the land.
Yeah.
Right?
So how will they take their land?
So in other words, they'll say, well, sorry, that particular portion of land I'm giving to this person.
But they can't do that.
They can.
No, they
They
can't.
can. In many countries where you don't have property rights, exactly what they do.
Yeah.
So then what they can do is they'll say, well, we'll value your property at 50,000 rand. What's your option? Right? You're going to have, it's take it or leave it. This isn't a debate. So in other words, everything that people that are watching this podcast would strive towards, owning a house, owning a car, will not belong to you. It will belong to the state, right? And it's exactly the opposite. You mentioned China, right? China did exactly the opposite. Before, when they didn't allow property rights, the country was mired in poverty. Now that they've got property rights, the place is booming. I'm saying this has been tried so many times throughout Africa, in many countries in South America, with devastating effects. I'm not sitting there trying, like I said, I'm not protecting my farm because I would never be near a farm, and if somebody gave me a farm, I'd sell it tomorrow. This isn't my thing. This is just years of understanding the way the world works, and go and have a nice look at what's happening in Venezuela right now. They've got what they call the Maduro diet. Have you heard about the Maduro diet in Venezuela? On average, every Venezuelan has lost 12 kilos because they can't afford to buy food. This is it's the country with the biggest oil deposits in the world, right? Yeah. But because of these policies, people are literally starving to death. So I'm saying, please understand, we are juggling with chainsaws. Yeah, right? Please read that manifesto. It is craziness.
So here's a very interesting perspective. When you think about what the EFF is doing and saying, it's actually, it panders to their base. Their base has a problem. They feel that because they don't have land, they don't have opportunities. So primarily what they're trying to redress, there's that word. They're trying to say, we will fix it by saying the land will belong to the government or the state, and then you will lease it from the state. Now, they have built a base of this. So which means that this idea that they've presented to people is one that people see as being viable. Now, whether or not it is an idea that will work a la NHI, it's still an idea that has resonated with a large majority of younger people who cannot afford houses, land, etc.
Yeah. And that's,
So how do we fix that? Because we could say, no, don't, this policy won't work. But what is the alternative? Do we continue with the same, where people do not have the opportunities? They don't see the future, because the people who watch this podcast, right? And obviously they will confirm their demographics. The people who watch this podcast actually don't see the possibility of owning houses. They will rent. They will rent. So the possibility of either saying I rent to a corporate entity or I rent from the government, it's still renting. But now I get land that I can build on. Because what's happened outside of, I would say, tier 2, tier 3 towns and cities.
Sorry, our landlord just walked away. As we're talking about
That's
land.
That's fine. That's funny.
he just realized he might lose his land.
Are you fine, Brad Dave? So,
I'm a landowner.
He's got to put his property for sale on property 24.
so what happens is that on the periphery of tier 2 towns and cities, people have started to move away, not out of the city, but not far enough to then basically say, I can get it from a chief, I can get it from somebody else. Because people want a house. The land is neither here nor there, because no one can really take it away from you, literally, right?
Oh, they
but
can.
you literally, unless they
yes,
move
can.
you off your land. But
We've got a history of that in this country.
100%, and maybe that's why this
Yeah.
is such a contentious issue.
So
because
we
wait,
wanna do
hold
that
on,
again.
because the people that did that are now seeing it as it being a possibility to them,
No, the people who did it are dead. I'm just saying, please.
or those who
let's
benefited
understand.
from it.
No,
Those who
I'm just
benefited
saying.
from
I'm saying that.
But they
it's
did benefit.
That's a separate discussion. Let's not. Let's talk about what you're saying there, right? And I'll tell you what's a very dangerous thing, and why it resonates with so many people is because there are people out there that aren't telling the full story. People in the media should be explaining what the implication is. They should be asking that question, right? But they won't. So they'll stop and they'll say, "Oh, okay, so you're gonna take away the land. Well, what happens to property rights, right?" Ask the question to its conclusion. Instead, they go with the headlines, and the headlines aren't what's in the detail. So I'm saying, as somebody that's been around the block, and this whole thing about benefiting from the past is a valid question, but it's a totally different question because there's not a one-size-fits-all answer to everything. The rich people, the people that benefited the most, have probably taken their money offshore and they're gone already. Okay, so I'm saying we stuck with what we stuck with. The people in South Africa are South Africans and should be recognized as such.
Okay,
Right, but just before we go, I just want to say to you, there's a very dangerous thing, if you ask me, as this thing of saying that poor people don't have much to lose. Well, surprisingly, you do, even if you're poor. Go ask Zimbabweans. What happens when you were poor and you thought it was a good idea? Now you're literally starving to death. I'm saying there is another notch down. That's 10 times worse. You go back, you start eating grass.
So how do you then fix it? Because
You fix it in a very simple way, because it's been done before. And we've just seen it. We've seen it in the last 30 years where two countries that spring to mind, massive countries, China and India, changed their economic policies, right? In both cases, changed it exactly the same. What they didn't do is they didn't change the political system the same. So I'm saying this is not a political debate. This is an economic debate. In both cases, they changed their systems to encourage property ownership, copyright, patent, etc., allowed people to work, allowed people to thrive, right? They And look at what's happened to those countries. They have dragged literally 1 billion people between those two countries out of poverty. 1 billion with a B, right? What they did was they said, there's nothing we can do about what happened in the past. In India's case, it was colonialism. In China's case, it was Maoism. They couldn't undo that damage. All they could do was move forward from there. And boy, they built new cities, they built new companies, they built new industries. That's the road forward. South Africans are wonderfully entrepreneurial people. To your point, you talk about grants. If you gave people 350 Rand a month, can they survive for a month on that? No. South Africans are surviving because they are resourceful and they're entrepreneurial and they're doing other stuff to get money. Otherwise, we'd have mass starvation in this country. So I'm saying let's for once acknowledge just how good South Africans are, right? All South Africans. And let's stop saying that the government needs to help them along. The government needs to get out of their way.
Yeah, sorry. Let's go to EFF.
Yes.
You guys will come in. You are extreme, okay? All you are saying is bloody extreme. There's no sky is gonna fall if the EFF was in power of government. I'll tell you why. First of all, the EFF is unlikely to get 50%, which means that any of the extreme policies are not going to be implemented by anybody because they don't have a carte blanche, right? They'll have to convince other people. The same way that they are in some coalition governments, chaotic as those may be, right, at cities and so on. They're not coming there and then waving their 7 pillars, calling them non-negotiable. Okay? So any hype that we're going to be in the troops is not anywhere near happening. The latest poll shows EFF has 11%. Okay? So it means they'll need other people to make sense of what needs to be done, right? However, if you look at the principal thing, forget about, we'll come to the detail, look at the principal thing. Let me just give you some statistics. You're saying there's no mass starvation. There's mass starvation. Don't know where you live. 14 million people go to bed hungry every day. 14 million. That's why there are parties that are saying, let's establish food banks, okay? So there's mass starvation, to just get that right. Secondly, right, 68% of young people are unemployed. 68%. That's more than half. Okay? We're the most unequal society in the world, not as a slogan, as a World Bank report. Now, all of these things, and I can mention more, including the fact that only 14% of people have proper healthcare, access to healthcare. You may hate the idea of NHI, but it's trying to, maybe it's going about the wrong way, but it's addressing a massive inequality. Right? If I didn't have a medical aid, I would be dead as we speak now. Right? Because my last 3 hospital visits were 200,000 at a pop. If I didn't have a medical aid, even if I was waking, where will I get that money? Right? So now all the combination of all those things are a time bomb. Okay? And we are fiddling here while Rome is burning by thinking that we can just continue on this path. We need to be able to say, how do we move away from the current path, right? And I believe that, forget about the EFF, I believe that a combination, right, of people from different parties, and that's why I always argue for a government of national unity. There are great people in the DA, believe it or not, okay? There are fantastic people in the EFF who are educated, who are clever. I mean, if you look at Dr. Ndlozi, Floyd Shivambu, those guys are educated. They know what they're talking about, right? I wouldn't doubt their qualifications, right, and what they are trying to do. There are great people in the ANC, right, who some of them have not even been given a chance to contribute to this country properly because there's factionalism, there's this and this, right? Now, if you bring even 2 or 3 of these big parties together, none of them can then insist on their own policies as they are.
Outright.
Okay? And it's as realistic as that. The last 3 elections have shown us nobody's going to get that necessarily an outright majority. I like to analysis about the fact that even the NC gets 51, they'll still now have to have more people to persuade to get certain things done. Same with the EFF is even worse. They had 11%, right? So we cannot be scared by the 11%. They need to come and negotiate. Let me give you some examples of some of the policies that you are teaching. Let's take the issue about they call it nationalization of banks. They have toned down on that thing. If you listen to the Julius' latest articulation saying, no, leave those banks alone. Let's create a state bank.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with the state bank. There's already state bank now. IDC, NEF, CIFA. All you need to do is to consolidate them and run them properly and remove corruption out of it. But the whole framework is to say, you got to be able to inject certain capital in economic activity, right? For people with potential to thrive, right? Now we've got an extreme view that says, no, don't give loans. In fact, if they created this, development institutions, and when you go there, they still behave like a bank. They ask you, what is, do you have land? It goes back to the land issue. By the way, the reason the ANC was formed was because of land. Now I'm rounding off to come to the doomsday, so-called doomsday. There's nothing like that. That's a scaremongering tactic. In fact, if you look at what we want to do and to in a sense quell this pending time bomb, you need a little bit of your EFF and a little bit of your ANC, because actually their policies are not far apart.
Yeah,
the ANC was formed for land; they just failed to do anything about it for 112 years. Okay, they failed. No, they didn't just fail for 30 years, 112, because when they got the opportunity in 1994, right? They confused securing property rights with neglecting landlessness.
Oh, okay.
They confused the two things like MacG is doing now. There was nobody who's talking about taking away property rights and so on. Even the EFF has articulated that in their recent articulations, right? That
So is their manifesto changed?
No, it has not changed. They know they are not going to be in power at 50%, right? But they need to be able to come to a middle point. You need a medium, right? Where you can say, how do we ensure that, for example, on the issue of land, and they are, in principle, they agreed, but mechanism they disagreed. The NC says, no, don't make us lease. Have a title deed. These ones are saying, no, the title deed must belong to the state.
Yeah.
Now, somewhere that a compromise can be struck.
In the middle there.
But what cannot happen is to leave the things as they are. And I given just the other day I was asking Groenewald from FF Plus. I said, Groenewald, let's leave the big scary things, land. People are the investors are gonna leave. Let's just talk a case study. I'm an Afrikaner, right? My land has been handed to me generations. I've got 30 hectares, and I'm not joking, of land. But I'm only using 2. Literally. I mean, 2 hectares is a big place.
Yes,
piece
massive.
of land.
Okay. Soccer fields.
I'm using 2 hectares. I've got the farmhouse here, and I've got the farm. I'm planting avocado trees, and I'm exporting on 2 hectares. The other 28 is lying fallow. Why can't you hand over that 28 to a central port that can be distributed to those who are starving next door? He couldn't answer me. No. If the ANC is in power, I'll never hand it. Or see now, he's going off on a tangent. I'm dealing with a principle here that says the issue about expropriation of land, which is already in our constitution, is not a fluke. It's addressing this kind of greed. There are people with land they are not using. Some are abroad. They even forgot. They don't even know where the land starts and ends. Right? By the way, there's a land audit that says this, not my rent. It's a land audit that talks about land in private hands that is lying fallow, that's not being used. Forget about the corruption of the ANC, giving friends to their farms. We can deal with that. Let's just deal with the principle here. There's no way in a country where 14 million people are starving, you can sit on 30 hectares of land which you are not using. And we must think that's fine because China has allowed property. People can own as they please. No, we need to find a medium here to say, actually, South Africa needs a mixed economy. You're not going to get away with saying it must be free market and everybody must just do as they please, or it must be communist.
Yeah.
We're going to have a medium. Why? Because no voter has given any of these parties a blank check. That's all I'll say on the EFF in terms of seeing the EFF ANC type of coalition to see 2 polar opposites that may come to the center, right? Whereas these ones of DA, Moonshot and what, they seem to be happy with the status quo. They're saying, no, don't touch our property, don't touch our land. Go and use state land. They're talking about a Karoo land that's dry there, where not even a peanut can grow. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about serious land here, right? That can be used for the collective good. And then you can work out the mechanism that works. But you can't be so scaremongering.
The other thing is that, just to add to what Prajeje is saying, that land audit also counts land that the government strategically holds in order to grow. So, for instance, like next to the highway, the government has to own land next to highways so that we can expand highways. But they include that as part of government-owned land. The other thing is that we have CBDs that are literally degrading in front of our eyes because people are overseas, right? So you ask yourself, why a particular building can be taken over and still works, and then you say to yourself, but like the state, who's the owner? Like, who owns this thing, right? And that's where ownership starts to fight the need of the people within an area, right? Because now
then you have one building, which
one building literally is falling apart. We should give the state a little bit more room, right, to have a say in this thing. Because there's not a single Perea in this country that's working. Perea, zonke nje Perea in this country. They are finished. Perea. But ask yourself why. Because people pull out of an area, right? And then who's meant to take care of that area? Who's meant to? The landowner or the property owner. But if they're not doing it, are we fining them? Are we going into the city saying, actually, there are 300 buildings that are owned by people that are not being properly taken care of? Can we find those people?
The state's got that power. The
But
state has got more than not using it.
What an incompetent state.
Yes.
So we need to strengthen the state
Yes.
and not weaken it. These guys are saying the state must get out of the way. There's no such a thing anywhere in the world. The state cannot get out of the way. Secondly, the state, must make people's lives better. What is this thing that Helen Zille is saying? They just clean your streets. You see how to finish.
Crazy.
How do you create an environment for business to create jobs? That's what the state comes in. It makes sure that you don't take 10 years to just get a permit to run a business. You in Rwanda take 2 hours.
2 hours, yeah.
In 2 hours' time, you got the license to run a business, hire people, etc. Here, try to CPIC. Their website was down for 2 months. 2 months. I'm not joking. People are trying to run businesses to go in 2 months. They were using manual system.
Hey, we sent the wrong JJ to Parliament.
So there's an incompetence of the state.
Yes.
And it's not going to be solved by a one-party state, guys. It's not.
Multi-party.
Even if the EFF came to power, they will need to hire other people who are not EFF.
And it brings me
Same
to
with
my
ANC, same
next
with
point
DA.
about coalition parties, right? But
Yeah.
before we get into that, are there any other small parties, independent parties, that you guys think are worth mentioning or talking about?
I'll tell you individuals. I think
We were done with EFF, right?
we can slice EFF for the next 2 days.
Yeah.
There's not enough time in the
I
world.
think they've molded a little bit.
Yeah.
To be fair, if you should go and see what I wrote about the EFF 10 years ago. You would cringe because I just wrote them off like.
And look at what they've achieved.
You understand?
Yeah.
So we cannot ignore that. They're not the third biggest party by a fluke, right?
I'll tell you though, very clearly, EFF is very conscious of their sensationalist politics.
Yes.
They're aware of it.
Yeah.
And they're aware that it alienates certain people. And they're happy for those people not to be part of their story.
Yeah.
And they're aware that it attracts a huge number of people.
Yeah.
And these are the people who gives them the ticket to parliament.
Yeah.
And they give them in bigger numbers. I am confident that EFF will grow in number. I don't question it at all.
Yeah.
They are the only party that has shown a consistent growth, and nothing is stopping them from growing, particularly with this current election. Nothing is really stopping them. Some people are saying MK and so forth. No one is eating EFF's lunch right now.
No.
So that's just the reality of it.
But
Zimasa, you
there's
mentioned-
another thing, Mike, that we need to be cognizant of. Actually, the rise of MK may not be bad for the EFF. Because they're not enemies. They didn't put,
No.
they're not like John Steenis and you say, these people are enemy number one. So these ones are saying, these ones talk our language of land. Let's club together.
Yes.
So maybe you don't want that. That will be the doomsday, maybe. I don't know. But I'm just saying that the top 3 parties, my dream is that they find a way. The election is such that they can't do without each other.
Yes.
We have a DA, regardless that I may not particularly like them. I said on my TV show the other day that over my dead body will they be a government. And I said, I didn't mean to say that. So it's a DA, ANC, EFF. that can be the future.
I
of
wanted
this
to
country,
ask you, you
if
mentioned
they,
something.
If they're coalesce.
You mentioned something when we started.
Yeah.
You said, you'd like to see elections do away with people putting people's faces on the ballot paper and just put the party.
Yeah.
Do you not feel like when you vote EFF, what are you voting? Are you voting for Julius or the party?
I think in the past you could have said that. I think now the EFF has grown. I think they've surprised a lot of people. Well, some could have called it purging, but they actually managed to change their central command, and it's yes change, but Julius is still there type of thing. I mean, I always say it feels a very Helen Zille-esque type of thing. It's like you're there but not there. So when you get that right, you start to figure that in order for the EFF to grow, they have to create opportunities for people to feel like if I went in with the EFF, there's growth in this party and I can get somewhere, right? And that's what you find in other places and other parties. That look, if I actually just roll up my sleeves, I can get there, right? But the other side of this thing is that then you've got to start creating great bureaucrats. Right, you've got to have people that like the office and don't like the march.
Yes.
Right, and when you get that right, because in certain instances you've got to have people that are administrators, right, and you got to have the person who has the vision, who goes out there, who rainmakes, who gets you the votes, who does all of the stuff. But then at the end of the day, they got to hand that thing over and say, "Oh, it's been great. You guys can continue working," and that's where I think the EFF needs to get to. They need to somehow, somewhere, win something outright and show us that, we can do this thing. We can do this thing.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Pratev, small parties that are coming up.
Chiluva party, I like the leader, Bongane. It's small, it's tiny, but I like the leader. I think Bongane is.
They're gonna get one seat.
No, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
That's really not a bad thing for them to get a seat.
Parliament.
I certainly hope they get a seat, not 0 point nothing.
Yeah.
And because I really like the guy. Yes, I think what he's done and achieved in Midval when he was a mayor through the DA. He's achieved a lot and he learned a lot. And he talks about all the lessons and really how even his ego got in the way at some point where he felt like he was, and that's something that we don't talk about a lot. When they get into power, it goes to their head.
Of course. Yeah.
And when we spoke about it, it was one of the few that I actually touched on because he became mayor and he had protect us and all of that. And he speaks about it. He says he saw himself change. He saw himself becoming better than everyone else, and in that moment, he thanks his mom for always grounding him. He uses a very small but important example. He says every time he visited his mom would insist that he washes the dishes because he's still a child in this house. And it's moments like that reminded him that I am no one. I'm no better. So it's exactly that. For me, it's that disconnect. I liked his story. I really liked what he's learned from Bongane Baloyi. Yes, I think it's incredible.
And then he left Action SA.
Yes, he's
in that order.
Yeah, but now he's decided to start his own thing.
Yeah.
And he's one of those guys who reveal the truth about the DA every chance he gets.
Oh, wow.
He'll
The truth about DA.
Well, Musi just wrote the whole book.
Yeah.
Coming out when?
Why I left the DA.
Why I left the
It's
DA.
coming out this week.
Beautiful.
So
Just before the election.
Other parties are half, man. I like the energy that Rise Mzansi comes with, but that's about it. It's the energy. I don't always agree with some of the stuff that they say, and it's okay. I guess that's
What
politics.
was your guys' take when they released the stats regarding how much each party got funded? Because a lot of money was given to.
That's a party that got some money.
It's actually not a lot of money.
It's not.
It's not a lot of money.
Not for election.
Not for elections.
Not a lot of money, MacG.
Yes, when I was looking at this,
It's not.
what is it?
It's literally not a lot of money. That's the scary thing. Like,
Gee.
what's actually happened in our political system is that
You sent it that dude in our WhatsApp.
is that we've actually, through the Political Party Funding Act, we've actually hamstrung ourselves because these guys are now desperate.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
Dude, why did you send me this? Black industrialists funded mostly Indians. The minister, Mr. Patel, is Indian.
No, I was exposing.
You are exposing me.
Okay.
No, I hadn't warmed up yet. I'm warm now. I'm warm now.
Action SA got 10 million, right?
Yeah. 10 million.
Yeah,
How many posters is there? Literally think about
Actually,
it.
go back to how much ANC got in trouble with that
100 and-
businessman. That's the old money.
150 million.
105 million.
For elections.
Who's printing these posters, man? We gotta get in the printing business.
They get black industrialists.
It's a black industrialist. So,
ANC 16 million.
man.
African Transformation Movement got about 120,000. Chain Starts Now got 35 million. DA got 65.
Yeah, 65 million.
EFF 2.6 million. Independent South African National Civic Organization got 2 million. We've got IFP getting 20 million.
Yeah, it's the open.
But JJ, maybe you can back
the
me up
Oppenheimers.
here.
Yeah.
Those numbers are not right.
They're not right.
Not.
They're not correct at all.
Yeah, it's what they
Rise 15,
it's what
yeah.
they're happy to declare.
Yeah.
The rest is
So-
underground.
Underground stuff. How they're able to get away with the underground money?
No, they just instruct somebody to pay for something.
Oh.
Yeah, so you say, I need 10 posters, somebody pays for those posters. It doesn't come through the account of the
Okay.
party. It goes to the account of the supplier.
Got you.
So there's a bit of, what you can call it in-kind contributions from, there are people who don't want their names to appear next to a donation for a political party.
Another way to do it is that there's a minimum of that you have to declare of 100,000. So we all give 99,000.
Yeah.
And then we
No,
don't
that's
have to
even too
declare.
complicated. They just
Yeah.
take care of the
Take care of
expense.
the expense.
You know?
So with all this money dished out, obviously not every party is gonna win. So won't they want their money back?
No, it's a bet.
It's like more between.
Gambling.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gambling.
It's like,
20 million.
It's like any investment. It's like any
Nah,
investment.
MacG, it's
You're not
small.
guaranteed of the return.
Yeah.
But also that, and I like that you keep repeating that it's a tiny
like,
amount of money
that's
in the
not the
bigger
money.
picture of the elections. If you're a party, how much money did you mention when you said the CR17 campaign?
$500 million just for the campaigning
Of a political within a
of
political
the president.
party. $500 million.
So you can imagine then if the party has to win, they're going to spend at least 5 times that.
Jeez.
The last election, the NC said they spent R1 billion. Isn't it? Yeah, I think I said they spent 1 billion.
So 2 million
long
for
ago.
EFF is nothing.
It's small. I think PA is an interesting party.
Okay.
Right? I think PA is interesting because again, I've always felt like if we want competition, let's have competition across the whole country.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And what they've been able to do and the inroads they've been able to make in the Western Cape have to be scaring the Democratic Alliance, and they don't want to compete. That's also what you've noticed. If you are that good at what you've been doing, allow people to compete for your voters, the minds and hearts of your voters, and be okay that these people will go to a PA rally and listen to a Gayton and listen to a Kenny and those guys, and then still come back and vote for you.
Yeah.
That's when you know you're actually doing well. But if you're worried that people are going to Athlone Stadium, they're filling it up, there's 34,000 people there, and you're going,
One seat in parliament.
you're shaking. It's not even one. Isn't it like 50,000? 50,000.
In the last elections, you needed 40,000 to
45.
get a seat.
Yeah.
And you?
I
Mr.
think,
Mike?
look, I think that one of the things that we've seen is on your list there, there's obviously the newcomers, Rise Mzansi, Action SA, Build One South Africa, Musi Maimani's crowd. And we've got almost no idea how they're going to do, if they're going to do anything.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting to see because in each case, they've really got a lot of money and they really have used it. You can see they've been very visible, posters, campaigns, etc. But it's just not coming through in the polls. That's definitely...
Yeah, because money doesn't always make you happy.
Oh, I like what's the party that was formed from churches? How do I forget it
ATM.
now? ATM.
ATM.
I really like the ATM leadership. I
Yeah.
think that chap is
Mr. JJ?
pretty
Look,
dope.
first of all, the one of the weaknesses of our political system now is that there's a lot of fracturing of opposition parties. Imagine if all these opposition parties listen to John Steenhuisen and just became all the moonshotters. Then you can choose between moonshot and doomsday. You know what you are choosing. You understand? Now there's fraction. I mean, these guys, they're not even in the polls, they are under other. They don't appear. We're talking 14%, 11, and then other.
So you don't have anyone that stood out for you?
No,
personally?
Action SA I think is great because remember they took it steady. They contested only a few metros,
Yeah.
right? And they've got a big presence in the city of Joburg, right? Before they then went to that's why they're very upset with the poll because the poll doesn't still put them under other.
Yeah.
You understand? But I think they're gonna do well. I think Herman has a particular appeal. In fact, Action SA is a little bit of a hybrid between ANC and DA, if you think about it. Because a lot of people migrated from a DA, and then there were others who were disgruntled from ANC. They came together. And I think their policies also reflect that a little bit. Bossa, Musi, by the way, we need to call him out. And I like him a lot. We need to call him out. He came out and said, I'm not going to form a political party. This country has too many political parties. Right? So therefore, I'm going to be independent. I'm going to do an independence thing, etc. He even went to court to support independence and what. And then he realized, hey, the ANC won't budge because they passed the dog's breakfast for an electoral act. That actually makes it more difficult to be an independent than to be a political party.
Yeah.
He said, to hell with this, I'm going to form the political party. So it's not going to make too much of a rudder. He could have just chosen a political party. For example, I don't understand why Musi and Herman didn't work together.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
You understand? Then they've pulled all that together into a powerful force. Rice Mzansi was a late entry, right? Very good ideas, but it doesn't have mass appeal. It's like, appeal to intellectuals and whatever. I could vote for them any day, but they are not going to make too much of a dent. And I don't think they must expect, historically, no party that has been formed 6 months before the elections will go above 7%.
Unless
They must just forget.
Unless you're MK bias.
No, but MK has improved it.
Well, I know.
Yeah, no, MK has not proved it. You understand? It's just the hype of Zuma and what have you. But the polls will humble you. Do you remember Cope?
Yeah.
We thought Cope was going to govern. In fact, the ANC believed that Cope was going to govern. Literally.
Sure.
Mbalula will tell you that he used to he send people to follow me, what I'm doing every day. And then he put posters here on the M1 here. Big posters saying, yeah, these people are coming for our bread.
Yeah.
Right? And where did Cope end up?
No way.
So 7% or 1.5 million votes out of 27 million votes. So you need to distinguish between the hype.
But there's something
And the
different
reality.
about MK, man. MK looks.
I don't think so. I
the
actually
same
don't.
stuff.
Yeah, I
For
don't feel like.
real?
Look, the biggest. They've got. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of just general chaos and disorganization going up to elections for
Yeah.
a new party,
Yeah.
and that's what they're experiencing.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think we should judge them now. I think post elections, let's see what they get, etc. The other thing is that they're hyper regional, right? And they've gone for that route specifically,
Yeah.
right? They've
They'll
gone the
make a dent
tribal
in
route. Yeah,
KZN.
Yeah.
They'll make a
They
dent.
will fight in KZN. I think they will be there in the numbers, but nationally, I don't think so. They've had a lot of stadium rallies outside of there that they've cancelled last minute. It's not going to happen because they're realizing that in order for you to actually get in national votes, you must have national appeal.
Yeah.
Because remember, the national vote is an aggregation of all the provincial votes.
Yes.
And another thing that it looks to me with MK is that potentially it looks like a Cope situation again when they go to Parliament.
Yeah.
They're going to be
They're
so
gonna fight.
fractured. They're going to fight
They'll
so
fight.
hard amongst themselves. And by the
Yeah.
time the next election comes along, they'll be getting 1%.
Seat.
Yeah.
Like Terra now is one
Yeah.
seat. And I don't know, I think he's still standing again. He needs to retire. The guy's going to die in office now because he's already had a stroke.
We should have term limits as well.
A lot of people are saying coalition parties, coalition government.
Yes.
What does that look like?
A mess.
Pradev?
Look, I think, I'll use a phrase that's used often, that we are a young democracy and we need to learn some of these things.
Okay.
And coalition politics is not something that we anticipated will come so quickly
yeah.
in our politics. And I think it took a lot of people by surprise, particularly the ANC.
Yeah.
And they seem to have embraced it. In Tswane, move on. Ekurhuleni, you move on. You accept defeat and you move on. But one thing that we've learned from it is that it's very chaotic. Decisions take longer. you are a mayor today, tomorrow you're no longer mayor. And imagine if that was a presidency. It gets even worse. So we don't want to have a Kuruleni in parliament. We don't want to have in national. We don't want to have Tshwane in parliament. We don't want to have, how many mayors did Johannesburg have?
Like eight in 3 years or something.
You see what I mean? So that's
ridiculous.
That's the problem with coalition politics.
Yeah.
We need to be matured, and I think there's a lot of policies that have to be put in place.
So
to try to
there's
manage
no world where
coalition
they could
politics.
get along. There's no world.
They'll have to get along.
They're forced to get
Remember,
along.
guys, coalitions are a consequence of failure for the voter to decide decisively. Right? It's not something that people will happily go to as they like. Because remember, even if let's say ANC gets 53%, then nothing stops them from forming a coalition government. At 53, if that's what they want, because they could say, guys, we think that we need a government of national unity, so we're going to take 10 ministries out of the 35 and give them to different parties. Let's work together. Nothing stops them from doing that, but because they are greedy, they won't do that. They are just looking for a needle, what do you call it? A hole in a needle. Like in the university, you call it Madoda score. If you just get 50, and you are surprised yourself that you passed. That's what we are looking at.
Gauteng, that's what happened.
Yeah. No. That one was a rigged one. Total rigging. You can't get 50 on the
Is there a possibility of these elections being
that
rigged?
one, no.
Not these ones.
No. Not. You see, right now, every party is sending hundreds of election observers and so on. The IEC will have to be very clever to rig this time.
Okay.
I'm a little bit more optimistic about coalitions at national level because there's more cameras, more microphones, more newspaper column inches given to national government than a city. City, you don't know what goes on in those smoke-filled rooms. But in Parliament, if somebody is in a coalition, they're in a government and they flip-flop and start destabilizing the country, the response will be very bad for that party because it'll be very easy to see who's the one making trouble. And I think that parties will
How do
pay.
they decide, okay, you this party takes finance, this one takes arts and culture?
No, they fight. I think
They've
got 14 days after the election has been announced to fight it out.
And which are the big five that you must have if you want to run the country?
The money.
The money.
The money, number one.
Finance, maybe infrastructure.
DTI.
Naturally,
Public
you should have
enterprises.
presidency.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's an obvious one.
And safety and security.
Safety and security. You need to run the army. You need to run the army. And one can get technical and say you need water, you need electricity and all of that.
Look, but I think-
When you destroy those, you collapse a country.
Yeah, but I think Julia says something interesting. You can put them in any portfolio, they will shine. And I think that should be the approach. The approach mustn't be there's a lesser portfolio.
Oh,
You can pick any portfolio and tell me it's
We'll
useless.
still chow.
And I'll tell you why it's not useless. Right? I mean, right now, 39
foreign
people
affairs,
died
Joko,
because somebody neglected to take care of water. People died of cholera. I mean, it's a Stone's Age thing, man. I mean, cholera. To die of cholera in an advanced economy like this is an embarrassment. So if you take that now and fix it, because if you look at the Auditor General report, it says 50% of all municipalities don't have a water management plan. It's actually scary.
Jeez.
50%. It's half. Right? And then 49% don't have a sanitation plan. So they don't know how their people are going to have water or how they're going to release the water. They don't know where. That's why you have pit latrines and bucket system after 30 years. So that portfolio may look, not so important. But actually, if you fixed it, you become the hero of the country. Right? Arts and culture. You think everybody who they don't know what to do. I mean, at university, in an SRC, if you didn't know what to do with you, you give you arts and culture. Now, look at how much Nigeria is exporting arts and culture. Film, arts,
Music, fashion, everything.
We have all of that here and to spare.
More.
But do we support our artists?
No.
All of them die like paupers. It's not a slogan. Right? But if we had a creative minister of... Paul Mashabela, when he was arts and culture, had a program called Mzansi's Golden Economy. But typically, as Gisa and all of it just disappeared. The next arts and culture just did their own thing. Right? But the idea there was to say, how do we monetize arts and culture? Because our people are asset, our music is world class, you name
I
it.
got Paul ended up joining the artists.
Yo.
Wrong podcast. Wrong podcast. You said it. Wrong podcast. Good idea.
Wrong podcast.
Wrong platform.
No, he's waking up the people.
But Brad Dave, let's wrap it up. In closing, actually no, before we wrap it up,
Yeah.
can you please deep dive and explain what's happening this year? Because there's 3 ballots,
Yeah.
three
Yeah.
ballot papers. Can you just inform the chillers like what's going on?
So I would want to give this to Prajeji because I saw him writing down immediately.
Yeah.
But primarily you've got your national ballot, you've got your provincial ballot, and then you're going to have your independents.
Yeah.
Regional.
Yeah.
And then you have to please put your X inside the box, guys. If it goes a little bit over, the party agents are going to fight and say it's a spoiled ballot. So that matters. Like those little things matter.
Yeah.
And I think that those are the simple things where you may not have gone there thinking you're going to spoil your vote. Of
course.
But you actually end up spoiling it. And a lot of people are deciding that, I'll split my vote in this way or that way. And you're also allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of people think if I vote on the national one, I vote for this party, I must vote for them. So
You can spread your vote.
So national, it's all the parties as we know them.
Yeah.
Yes.
About
vote
50
there.
something in the ballot.
And then the next one is the
Provincial.
provincial.
So
now,
now some people are only contesting in their province.
In the province.
There are certain provincial parties.
got you.
Right? Then
So I
the
can vote
regional,
ANC national,
Yeah.
DA.
yeah,
province.
and then maybe
Province,
and maybe an independent like Anelem Da who will cause trouble for all of them. I think I would.
Important.
Yeah, we just need the independent. It's interesting because the law allows for independence, but you only have 11 guys. Can you believe it?
Yeah, JJ is one. JJ, he's running for the podcast.
Oh,
but
is that
only in Free State. Only in Free State.
Oh, is that so? Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, we got 11. No, we don't know him. But so it's 11. So I know Anelem Da, and then they said
Get a shot.
very good chap called Zaki Ahmad.
Yeah.
He's the one who got the government to change the HIV/AIDS policy.
Wow.
In fact, all the political parties in parliament failed
For
to
a
get
long
to
time,
get
been
that.
fighting that for a long time.
TAC, an NGO in a corner with a little bit of a laptop, not a lot of fax. In those days, a fax and a phone, got government to change its policy. But that was after 300,000 people died. Let's just make that footnote. So we've been wondering who to vote for and so on. Split your vote, vote maybe for if you are a hardcore ANC, like maybe your relatives were also in the ANC, they were in the church where ANC was formed, and you feel that you can't let them go. You vote for ANC national, and then in the region here you say you can choose red or blue,
Yeah.
and then you go and get an independent, like the ones I've mentioned. The others must still campaign.
Yeah.
So spread your vote.
Yeah.
Let's make sure that these people can work together, and you force them to work together. Right? Don't vote EFF. No, I know that's what they would like, but I think it's a bad idea to do that. Spread your vote, because where we are now, we need to save the country, guys. And a one-party state is not going to solve.
We need
save this
accountability.
Yeah. But Dave, predictions. Going
Jeez.
into-
No, it's pretty obvious. ANC is back in power.
Okay.
I think the polls they got it wrong on a lot of levels. And the thing about polls is they create a narrative. So that becomes language, and that's what we keep saying now.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about a 45 and 40.
But
And
where did we get it from?
yeah,
From the
there's
poll.
no, and if you call people in this room, if you ask people in this room, we call that a poll, we are wrong. It's not a
yeah.
poll. If you don't go to Chua, if you don't drive around,
Let's see, how many are voting
Soweto-
ANC here? Okay. he's
How many are voting
EFF.
ANC in this room?
Who's voting ANC?
Let's do a poll.
Let's do a poll. Are we doing a poll?
Big enough sample size.
It's not. It's not at all. It's actually terrible. So that's my point. ANC is back in power. There's
Yeah.
no questions about it. Like I said when I started, even if they go below 50, they will.
Al Jama, they'll get Al Jama.
They'll get one, like they're doing in Gauteng,
enough, yeah.
in Johannesburg. It's easy to be in government, and that's why the president's so confident. I saw him in an interview on 702, very confident that he's back in power.
Wow.
And other parties, EFF is going to increase. The DA is going to struggle with 20%. Unfortunately, their politics are wrong, and they have a small base to work with. And as long as the Freedom Front is still strong, the DA will continue to struggle. That's just the reality of it. And the little stunt with Hamas and all of that has cost them a vote, and it cost them a Muslim vote in South Africa. And the PA is working really hard to eat the DA's lunch in the East. What's that? What do you call it?
Compete.
Yes, now they have to compete. And then they never had to in the past for 3 or so elections.
Beautiful.
So that's just the reality of what's going to happen. The ANC is back in power. That's just the
Zimasa,
reality.
your predictions?
ANC sneaks through the post.
But that's cool.
No, they definitely sneak through the post. I think for them, I think that this is the last opportunity to have any semblance of like, we can do this thing. I definitely think EFF goes up. DA stagnates a bit. I think PA and all these little parties will definitely get I'd say the demographic vote, right? Those key demographics. I think they'll get those votes up there. Yeah, definitely. I think we might see Gayton in Parliament. That's yeah, he's definitely going to go to Parliament, and I think it's going to be a lot more interesting. Because you also, rightly so, you don't want to throw everything out, because the other side of this thing is that the guys who are meant to be going up and competing fairly with the ANC have not painted themselves in glory. And that's very important for people to understand. The reason why people are feeling like, yeah, man, more of the same, they literally not even looking at the opposition. You know how crazy that is? And that's why we're in this sort of like, this weird quagmire that we find ourselves in, because the other guys have not really put up their hand and said, these are our policies. This is why our policies are here. This is how they help you.
Yeah.
And we think that we really deserve your vote. And we'll show you over 5 years why you voted for us. So, and that's what I think is happening in South Africa right now.
But Mike, your predictions?
I believe in the polls. I do, because the polls are generally a little bit more scientific than we think. And as you get closer, they get more accurate.
Yeah.
And I think that you're going to end up with the ANC in the sort of mid-40s. I do think, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
If you looked at their total percentage of the vote in the last local government election, which I know is not the same thing in 21, they got 47% of the vote in 2021 nationally. And I don't see what they've done since then that has been any better. I can only see it worse, right? So I see them there. DA is going to struggle. For them, a good result is to stay where they were, and they probably haven't earned that. EFF is going to be a question mark if they don't grow. One sort of side point, they actually haven't continued to grow. In the last election, they went down compared to the previous election, and that one I've argued before. So there's a bit of...
What did the EFF do to you, bro, Mike?
No, it's just... It's
The
just
same thing
numbers.
Steenhuisen did to the same thing.
It's in numbers.
Yeah.
The numbers are there. And, then MK, I think they'll get, 5-6% on nationally if you convert their provincial vote. And if you add it all together, what you're looking at is that those, if you look at that and you say, okay, fine, the ANC gets 45, the DA gets 20, that's 65%. Let's say the EFF gets 15, that's 80% of the vote. If MK get 5 or 6%, that's 86. And so you go on. It's leaving about 8% for the rats and mice when you include IFP, Freedom Front Plus, they'll get 1 or 2%.
Yeah.
So, it's going to, this isn't going to be one of these Hollywood movies where suddenly there's a new government and a new change. No, the change is going to be a bit more subtle than that. But it's going to change.
Wow.
It's going to change dramatically because there's going to be proper answerability that we've never had before.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And we hadn't have it in the old South Africa. We didn't have it in the new South Africa. And I'm very excited. I'm very excited. The only thing that I'd say, because there's a lot of, I'm not the youngest oak on this panel, but let me tell you that this doesn't have to take generations for this country to prosper. We've given examples of countries that prospered look at Rwanda. 30 years ago, they were killing each other. They had a genocide, they had a civil war. Now they're one of the richest countries in the world and growing. South Africa, we don't need to go and make every wrong decision before we make the right decisions. And the people watching this, please make the right decisions. Ask yourself a simple question. If I could offer you a passport to live in any country in the world, which country would you choose?
South Africa, definitely.
No, and I said not South Africa.
Oh, not South
Not
Africa.
South Africa. Which country would you live in? And then vote for a party that's most likely to make South Africa look like that country. Right? You know what I mean? And that might inform your decision a little bit better. Because
I'm thinking Dubai. Which part
Dubai.
is
Yeah,
like
Dubai. We're going to need to strike.
They have problems with floods.
I'd go to Zimbabwe and come back to South Africa.
I'm just going to leave you with one story because in 1991, South Africa were allowed back into cricket, Test cricket.
Yeah.
And we went and played our first series back in international cricket in India. We went and played 3 one-day matches. Do you know that India couldn't afford to host us? They couldn't afford to fly the South African cricketers to India. They couldn't afford to put on 3 one-day matches. They couldn't afford to televise it. They couldn't afford to get advertisers around the stadium. India. They now got the IPL, which is they run cricket, and they make billions and billions of dollars out of cricket. It's because they had an authoritarian government.
You
They
see.
changed the structure of the country, and look at where India is today. And we can make the same decisions.
There's a lot of countries that have done that. I like what's happening in El Salvador now with regards to being the highest meta rate in the world, meta capital in the world, to being the safest, one of the safest countries in the world right now. And it took 2 years, you know, so decisions can be made that are clear, that are hard,
Decisive.
that very decisive, and that can take this country forward. I think we've been stuck in some paralysis for the past 6 years, or maybe for the past 15 years. And maybe it's time for us to wake up from this paralysis.
I think we're not anywhere near dictatorial government. I can assure you, Mike.
I didn't say dictatorial, I said authoritarian.
We are not near anywhere like that. Because we just have to look at you with the freedom you have to speak against things. You talked about the media. You talked about civil society. Talk about business that actually also can pull the strings. If you have that combination of things, your authoritarian government won't thrive.
No.
So that's I wanted just to do that.
would be a
Second thing,
place
all
for-
of you are wrong on the issue about integration of the African economy. You're saying township, if you are starving, you can't worry about the township. But actually, the EFF thinks the township is the whole continent. Look at Europe. Europe inter-country trade is 8%. That's why it's thriving there, and the pound is 24 times here.
Don't they need that to survive, though?
Of no basis.
No.
by the way.
It's inter-country.
All I'm saying, no, but they feed off each other's strengths, right? What you find in Germany, Germany specializes in certain things that are not the specialty of Italy or not the specialty of Greece, right? Now here, our inter-country was 13%. Poor.
In SADC.
Yeah, not SADC, Africa.
Oh,
With all the resources we have,
Again, they're all in
minerals
Europe.
and what-
They're all...
Yeah, no, but I'm saying that you can't let that situation continue and think that what you have been doing for the last 30 years, which is just to be so internally focused, or the last 45 years, if you take apart its isolation, is what's going to get out of poverty, out of a growth rate of 0.1.
we've got to trade our way out.
Right? So I see the bigger picture that says, if you just start with SADC, if we traded enough in SADC, right, half of your problems may go away. You may not even feel that people are taking your jobs, because actually there'll be jobs in those countries, right?
That's the EFF position.
Yeah. No, I don't know what it's in. It's actually an ANC position.
Okay.
Right? It's actually an ANC. That's what I was saying. These people are not too far apart. Right? It's all about incompetence of implementation. Do you know that the ANC has been talking about a uni visa since 2000? I'm not joking. I was working for the Department of Tourism at that time. They were talking about the uni visa, meaning I can get onto a plane now. When I get to Ghana, I'm not made to pay for a visa. It's easy travel. So instead of struggling here where 14 million people are starving, you go to the next country where, in fact, they need your skills.
Like in Europe.
So I think you must understand it that way. I think this whole idea that people are coming to eat our bread is misplaced, because yes, Europe is an example. They're not saying put a fence here if you move from if you move from London to France, you must produce a passport. It's nothing like you get onto a train, you are in France, right? You trade. You can have a business in France while you live in London. You can actually work in France while you live in London by taking a fast train there.
Well, not
right?
anymore.
So
It's tough.
I'm just packing that there to say I understand the bigger picture, and we cannot just think small.
Yeah.
No, let's survive
Sadik,
here. And so
250
I'm not even going to go to the
million people,
historical issue about the fact that if during apartheid that was the case, half of us will not be alive because we had to run away to those countries. We've forgotten that. And people are saying, no, don't tell us about that. That's 1960 stuff. No, it happened for real here.
Frontline
People
states.
had to flee here because we were being oppressed here. And we flee to Lesotho, which now we're undermining to say, why don't we make it the 9th province? We've forgotten quickly, right? Anyway, predictions. ANC, right? Unlike what the polls are
The
saying.
road man is calling us to order.
Yeah.
He's cooking.
ANC, unlike what the polls are saying, right, is going to scrape through because, unfortunately, Mike, I don't believe that the polls are thorough enough. Purely on a basis of grants, right? If they just poll the 26 million people, I'll listen to them. They poll these 26 million people and say, just put another party in place, but your grants will still be there. And then Ramaphosa tells them the opposite. Right? I'm saying that for me, that alone changes the picture of how the ANC can just scrape through. But I agree with you, Mike, that they will still be more accountable if they just scrape because it will scare them that, hey, we almost lost power. And if I was them, I would still do a government of national unity so that you pacify the other parties and say, let's work together to save the country.
Yeah.
I think EFF will take the official opposition spot, right, in line with your poll now. Although I don't believe it. But if you look at the last poll, they were neck to neck with the DA. But because the DA in the recent 3 or 4 weeks have made so many own goals, this banning of a flag thing was stupid, to say the least. It was really bad. All they needed to do was to take a picture of banning Parliament. Parliament was banning. He said, there's already a picture. They just said, look, now they're going to ban a symbol that unites all of us.
Yeah.
You understand? That's actually just purely bad.
The only thing I could have done worse is burn the Springbok.
Why didn't they do that? They show a banning Springbok and see whether their constituency will like that. Right? So EFF, DA, neck to neck. I'm not putting my neck on the block, but I won't mind EFF as an official opposition, right? Even if they were completely out of government, right? But I think a national unity of the three, DA, EFF, ANC, is what this country needs. Because we're too polarized.
Yeah.
And in our polarization, we lose sight of things that can destroy all of us.
Yeah.
Right?
Do you think this division is done intentionally?
It is done intentionally because remember there are many reasons. It's not the only reason, but there is the issue about white privilege that must be protected. Right? On your
maintain the
podcast,
status
I
quo.
said to you, white people have gained more from affirmative action than black people. That's my view.
And
If
there's
you
a division of the black vote.
just look at the corporate South Africa, right? And the statistics tell you a story that the recent report says 70% of all new appointments, new promotions were to white people. 70%. They're laughing. When you're saying affirmative action, they're laughing at you. What affirmative action are we talking about, right? The fact that companies here, I mean, look at the MTN. Companies born in New South Africa, right, are making strides. In 30 years, they are global companies. ShopRite is all over the continent. Standard Bank is all over the stuff that was not there before 94 because we were isolated.
More money after.
You understand?
94.
So we got to be able to balance, to say, yes, there is a part of the country, and Becky was right for a change on this two nations theory, right? We are two nations, literally. You got the Santen here, where people are dying of food, and Alexander, where people are dying because they don't have food. And they are separated by a highway, right? And that story you can find in KZN, you can find in Constantia and Khayelitsha, you can find everywhere.
Venda everywhere.
Until we remove this highway somehow and integrate these communities, we're in trouble. Some of us will be dead by the time that trouble happens, right? But our generations are going to suffer, and we need to decide now what we're going to do. Rats and Mice, MK, IFP, and all the Rats and Mice in one book called Other, right? Rice Mzansi. So we need those voices in parliament,
Yeah.
right? But they're not going to make a dent in these elections these elections, traditional parties are going to be there. Then the others will now come to push us to a new kind of politics, if you like. That's my story.
Thank you,
Here's the
PodcastwithMacG.
point. I wrote a little note there. The youth vote is a cream
It is.
that is lying there that no one is tapping on. Really,
Yeah.
I don't think there's a political party currently in the current elections
That is
that is
aggressive around.
clearly speaking to them and no one else. They're trying, but they're not getting it right
Yeah.
because they
We've got
but
a
2000
new
are
1
different.
million new voters, ne?
Yeah, 1
Yes.
million additional youth voters.
Absolutely,
I'm one of them. I'm voting for the first time this year.
You see, you have over 37%.
Yeah.
I'm always the same age.
Don't judge it. I judged them before.
And you don't know who's voting.
Let me tell you, the last elections, the local government elections, I come back from Pretoria from voting.
Yeah.
I'm driving here, they're recording something here.
Yeah.
I asked them, have you guys voted? Every single one said
No.
No.
Did you chase them away to go and vote?
So I should have actually.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm chasing you out.
Just to jump onto what Pradev is saying. So the reason why no political party has or is focusing on the youth is because the youth don't turn up.
Okay.
That's the truth. And until they turn up. So if they surprise everyone,
Yeah.
right, on the 29th and they turn up,
There's a difference
trust,
registering
next election they'll be focused. So if you're watching
But
this,
it's a chicken and egg.
yeah.
They must go. They
must
must
go.
persuade them to turn up.
Yes.
And
I think it's a decisive vote.
But you could go
reckon?
for that. But
Yeah.
yeah, it is. It
The
matters.
youth vote is 30-something%.
It matters. It matters. But they don't think they matter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why
don't
do you
think they
suppose not one political party used one bit of humor in their
Every
campaign?
time.
Because it's serious, this is South Africa.
Everybody in South Africa makes
Serious,
jokes.
they do it. We're
We're
trying to run a
the
country.
funniest country, and not one political party uses humor. I can't understand.
Because maybe it's that consequential. Maybe they realize that on the bigger stage.
No.
it's- yeah.
There's also an ego issue. And much to your point about faces and so on. South Africa, unfortunately, is too personality based.
Yeah.
Bantu Olomide has been the only leader of the UDM for
The
25 years.
The honorable.
Okay? Does it mean there are no leaders in the UDM? Buthelezi died a leader of.
He's still on the ballot.
You understand? He's still, even after,
for Sham.
beyond the grave, he's still on the ballot.
I
Right?
can defend them there, though.
People are saying Mandela now. They say, hey, we're going to vote for the party of Mandela. Mandela died 10 years ago. Right? So, unfortunately, we are too personality based. Right? And so, parties that are not personality based are going to struggle. Rice Mzansi, I see some guys say, no, we don't care about recruiting big guns and so on. But all of them, I mean, why did this guy from Shuluva, your friend,
Bogan.
because he and Kemen couldn't get along. There were two big egos in a room, and one of them had to leave. You understand? Same. Why did Musi not partner with Hammond? They sat down. This is not a.
Eben is a common denominator in
No,
the story.
no. They sat down and they couldn't agree who was going to be leader. Yeah,
Imagine.
simple. I mean, they are both my friends, but they may be angry with me. But they failed to agree who must be the leader. Otherwise, they say, no, I must be the leader because I was the leader there. This one said, no, but I was the mayor. How? And then they deadlocked.
Now we have two parties.
So,
Now we have two parties.
so good luck getting them in a coalition.
Guys, I want to thank you so much, man. I don't know about the team, but hey, I still don't know. Eh? I think it's harder now than when we started. Eh?
But you've got three choices.
Yeah.
You can
just
close
figure
your eyes
out.
and just cross.
Make a short
No,
list.
don't close your eyes.
You're
It's post ballot.
Yeah.
Oh, and then cross. Don't change your mind after you've crossed,
No,
and then
can't
think you
cross
can
again.
cross
No,
again.
No, but if you change your
It's a
mind,
small
you can
Ask for another one.
Yeah.
You can always ask for a new
Guys,
ballot.
thank you so much for your time, man. Really appreciate it. This was very fruitful. Hopefully the chillers enjoyed it as well. And by the way, no one was paid to come speak here, ne?
Nobody.
From any party, ne?
No funding.
No funding here.
No funding. No funding.
I'm a saint.
Finally, the truth comes out.
We are here, man. Podcast and chill. Boom.
Welcome to Black Excellence. Do not fear, for if you do, just sip on some grandeur. And if you still do, ask ourselves, what would Mapapunzi do? Phakama chila, ixesha lefiki. Ungoyiki, even when they ask you, awusabi yini? Do not fear, for if you do, just say, Anistivi. This is the medicine of censorship. This is the pill. Which one is that one? Podcast and chill.